It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Eddie Anako, Jason Snell. Yes, he's back. Alex Lindsay. They're all here. Jason spent 2 days at the Apple campus getting the demos of all the new AI stuff. So he's going to tell us his experiences there and a few things you might not have seen on stage in Cupertino last week. We'll talk about all the new features. We also got some rumors on the Apple Watch. New features there as well. And what is it those Apple executives are doing with their legs? It's a little weird. We explain all next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 926, recorded Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. Hey, lady, do a thing. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest Apple news. Jason Snell's back from his mystery assignment somewhere deep within the bowels of, I'm guessing, the Apple campus. Hello, Jason.
I literally sent pictures to the Discord.
I know, we showed them.
Discord last week.
Yeah, we showed them.
While I was sitting inside a waiting area inside the ring. So, yeah there was no pressure. I was just, waiting to go into yet another briefing. They didn't intend for us to spend all that time in the ring. I think they expected that only, the riffraff, the press would not be ever allowed in there. But, things changed and we get to go in and there's many trees. It's very impressive. Anyway, I'm good. It's good to be back in my garage instead of at Apple Park.
I want all the details, but we'll get to that in a second. First, say hello to Andy Anako, WGBH Boston. Hello, Andrew.
Hey there, hi there, ho there. Goodness gracious, it's steamy up here in New England.
Is it? Oh yeah, you're under a heat dome.
Yes, exactly. The dome. These domes are rarely a lot of fun, are they? There's Thunderdome. You don't want to be there, and you don't want to be here either today.
Yeah, actually, it's not the Stephen King dome, but it might as well be, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes.
And also from officehours.global and 090.media, Alex Lindsay, my personal studio consultant.
Hello.
And the king of 3D, I guess.
I think I'm pretty low on the totem pole in 3D these days.
Oh.
I was building some 3D models over the weekend, and I was like, oh man, I'm really rusty. I don't remember where all these buttons are anymore. So I'm trying to come back up to speed.
Well, there is much to talk about besides what Apple announced last week. But before we get to all of that, including a big breaking story, The Information has a scoop. But Jason, give us your thoughts, your feelings, your impressions inside the ring.
Well, I mean, the facility itself, it's just amazing. I feel like maybe this is Steve Jobs' greatest product. Like, it's amazing. The scale of it is incredible. It's just a huge facility. The trees, I was there the first time they had the press at the Steve Jobs Theater. It still smelled like manure everywhere, right? Like they're basically planting everything. So it stunk. It smelled real bad. But it has all grown up and is just gorgeous. And there are trees everywhere. And the way it's built, you really can't even tell that you're in a city. It's like you're on a little space colony with a big building in the middle of it. And we did a briefing over at their fitness center, the employee fitness center, which has they took over. Bad news for everybody doing hot yoga at Apple last week. Your yoga room was instead where we did an iOS briefing. But
did it have a certain funk to the?
It did not. It did not.
Okay.
I did a podcast last year that was right off of the locker room, and that smelled like a locker room. But this was, they were lighting candles or whatever they needed to do to get the funk out, and they did. You bring in the funk and then you get the funk out.
Did you ride the little bikes? Did you ride the bikes or did you just walk?
I just walked past the bikes, but the bikes were there. The fitness center is, it's amazing. Anyway, it is like they spent so much, more money than anyone reasonably would spend on a corporate facility building this thing. And it is beautiful, like right down to the giant panes of glass that have to be made. Like that's, if I had one thing to walk away from being on the Apple campus, it would be, you get the sense that almost anywhere else you go in the world, everything is constructed lovingly at times from commercially available parts, right? And the Apple campus is constructed, you get the impression, entirely from custom-made parts, made only perhaps for this location and occasionally for an Apple store somewhere. It's that kind of vibe. So like often the pictures don't make sense because you're like, well, that pane of glass can't be that tall and continuous. And the answer is yes, it is. It's probably the tallest continuous piece of glass being used in architecture anywhere in the world. And like, it's just one after another. But it was cool to have them, let us inside, because I don't think, like I said, I think the plan was Steve Jobs Theater or nothing. But instead, I think COVID really kind of changed their plans, and they decided to be good hosts, and they were good hosts. It was they kept us busy. I was there 2 days, and I was basically there all working the whole time.
Wow.
2 days with briefings and stuff.
Wow. So what did you see? 2 days. Wow.
Yeah. Well, they had a lot. Look, I know you talked about this last week. It's all about storytelling. It's all about salesmanship and PR. And in this case, I think trying very hard to, one, get across that no, Apple is not behind in AI. We were there all along, and we're still there, and we're going to be there in the future, and don't worry, which I think, there's still skepticism, and I think rightly so, because so much of it was future tense. But I think if you look at what they wanted to do, which was reassure, say, the stock market,
I just happen to have a little graph here in front of me of the stock market. This plunge here was the day of the event. And if you look at you zoom in, it was an up and down thing. But as soon as the event concluded, you could see the climb here. Yeah. And Apple actually had the biggest one day in 2 years. And once again, eclipsed Microsoft in its market cap, or was it NVIDIA? Anyway, they in the race for $3 trillion.
They're up in the trillions. $3 trillions now. Yeah. So that was part of their point, was right, just to sell the idea that Apple's on it, is the way I've been phrasing it. It's like, not that everything's going to be there this fall. A lot of it is very much, TBD, but like to reassure people, look, we know, and we're on it, and we've got a plan. And so
the market bought it. The market bought it.
And doing 8 briefings, they're trying to tell us, like, here's how this will work. I mean, first there's a standard OS, right? It's like, I had a great briefing about watchOS where they're literally like, we got no time in the keynote. Let me tell you what's in watchOS. And there's actually stuff in there, but they just didn't have it. But watchOS, iOS, and all of that. But also, like, there was a privacy briefing that essentially was talking about the architecture of private cloud compute, because they want to reassure people as well that when they're taking stuff up in the cloud, it is more private than what people assume other AI stuff is.
Well, and they needed to do this because they were watching Microsoft's stumble with recall. In fact, Microsoft's now announced, we're not going to ship it with the new computers after all.
And it's funny because it's something that I heard in passing, and I can't find a reference to it now. But one of the things they said is there is this semantic index that they build up, which is kind of like a search index, like Spotlight, except it's for AI parsing. And they don't, when they send out a job, they don't send out the entire index, right? They actually the engine chooses what bits are relevant and then passes them on. But my understanding is that is encrypted, and that index, and the only binary on the system that can decrypt it is the Apple intelligence processor. That, like, they locked it out so that you can't write a program that rips through your semantic index, because it won't let you.
And that was a problem with recall.
It feels very familiar to what Microsoft is dealing with.
Yeah. Microsoft, initially when they shipped recall, researchers said, hey, everybody has access to this SQLite database. It's not encrypted once you logged in. That was a big problem. Microsoft did lock it down more. They said, okay, now you have to authenticate with a hello before you can look at it. But
I think it's interesting, given their fractious relationship with a lot of security professionals, the fact that Apple is really saying they want the cloud compute stuff to be verified by security professionals.
Yeah, that was interesting.
They're going to provide something that you can run in emulation on a Mac and actually watch the server and how it works.
That was
they've
smart.
taken great pains, and that there's this whole validation system where it won't even send data. The AI system on your device won't send data to the server unless it can verify via a signature that server itself is in the list of verified builds of the server. And the idea there is that if they invalidate a build because of a security problem, it will not send data to that server. So like they're really relying, again, we'll see if it works or not. We'll see what the issues are. But I like the fact that even if there are issues, they're basically saying we're going to lay it down here and let the security community look it over, because Apple's goal is not to glean information. They want to build a secure system because they just want to buttress their own devices with some stuff that needs cloud compute, not build a whole cloud infrastructure, general infrastructure for the masses. So they're motivated to make this work, and hopefully it will, because I like the idea of knowing that even if they're using cloud resources, that they're not looking, they can't see it, they throw it away when it's done and it's end-to-end encrypted. That helps a lot.
Yeah, I was impressed. I was reminded that back in 2016, when a lot of AI features started coming to Apple Photos, that they made this whole policy statement about, no, we're not going to be training stuff on your photos. If you want to contribute information, that will be strictly opt-in. But basically, we're going to be maintaining privacy while we bring this ability to identify your family members, identify your dog. So that's been pretty consistent for like 8 years now. So that's a nice track record to rest on.
Microsoft's Copilot Plus PC shipped today, and the embargoes were lifted on these new Snapdragon Elite-based laptops, which are basically Qualcomm and Microsoft's attempts to make an Apple MacBook Air M3. The reviews are very positive. Qualcomm has stumbled before. Last year, they promised a lot, delivered little. Apparently, this is living up to its promise. This is Zach Bowden writing in Windows Central. We had Daniel Rubito, the editor-in-chief, on Sunday. He was very cagey. I said, well, how is it? He said, well, because they were all embargoed until today. I think that there's some real competition out there, which is good for Apple. The thing I pointed out last week on Monday was that this was an exercise purely in marketing, because none of these products are going to be available, in many cases, not even until later this year after iOS 18 comes out, right, Jason? I mean, were they even showing you how stuff works? Were they able to demonstrate it at all?
Well, I think Apple has been moving for a while now to the idea that when they make an announcement in early June at WWDC, what they're saying is, here's what we're working on for the next 12 months.
Yeah.
And they don't all, it's for a while now, they haven't all been shipping. However, I will say this was another level of that Siri conversation. The Siri segment of the presentation was the most far future tense kind of, so Siri will in the future, Siri will do this. Yeah. And that feels very much like, they're just calling it and they also kept saying this is the beginning of a journey, which means we're not going to be done for a long time and it's going to take a while. So yeah, a bunch of features not shipping in the fall with the .0 release. The .1 release will probably have a bunch of things missing that will be next year. And then next year means next year, right? It doesn't necessarily mean January. It may mean March, it may mean May, right? It may even be like the day before the WWDC 2025 keynote. You never know with this stuff. Right. So yeah, it's a work in progress. And I think that's the most clear sign. Like, I've been viewing it that there are three different things they announced last week. One is stuff that they were going to announce anyway. Apple's been doing machine learning stuff for ages. They've had Neural Engine in their chips forever. A bunch of their stuff was going to be there regardless. I think there were also some things that they would have shipped eventually, but maybe next year. But because it's AI and they want to change the narrative, they pushed that stuff forward and said, no, we're going to sprint. And if we can't get it in this fall, we'll ship it this winter, maybe. And then the third thing would be like stuff that they maybe wouldn't have shipped at all, but they feel like they need to because AI. So it's a mixture of those things, but you can see the places where they're behind, where they're sort of like, yeah, like Apple Intelligence isn't in the betas now. It will be eventually, but like it's going to be a long, slow rollout for that and Siri and a whole bunch of other things.
So this was, as I suspected, an exercise more in positioning and marketing. I gave them an A+ for it. They instead of people saying, oh, look how they're just playing catch up to Android and things like that, they showed a clear path forward. But it's important for we Apple users to remember that none of this stuff is available yet. Some of it may not be available for as long as a year.
Yeah.
So tell us
there's
then.
There's a lot of confusion about it, right?
Yeah. Well, just so everybody understands. But on the surface, it looks great, and I think they're doing the right thing. They're going in the right direction. They're doing AI right. I said yes last week. They Sherlocked the term AI. They turned it into Apple Intelligence. Very smart. Everything they did was smart. But now I want to hear, because it sounds like there was some real stuff there that they didn't get on stage because they were so anxious to show that they were, up to speed with AI. Tell me about the WatchOS, for instance.
Oh, WatchOS. Well, again, the poor WatchOS people are like, they didn't talk about us. But there's here's an example. And this is actually, there are a lot of examples of this, clearly the same tech being deployed in different ways across different platforms. And I think that's good. Apple, how many OSs does Apple have? No company can have that many operating systems unless it's reusing material. There's just no way. So one of the things that I was impressed by is there's a new version of the Photos face on watchOS. And I know this is going to seem kind of obvious, but it didn't do it before, which is Apple has built a pretty good ML model for subject detection. And you see it in things like that feature they added where you can take the subject and drag them out and put them somewhere or make a sticker or whatever. Well, so the watch is going to do subject detection on the photos of the photo face. Previously, if you wanted a photo or a shuffle through photos on your watch face, it's got to show the time, right? And the time would be on the face of the person that is, or on the subject. It's oh, look at that beautiful vista completely covered by the time. And in the next version of watchOS, guess what? They do subject detection. They realize where the subject is, and the time is drawn not on the subject. Likewise on Apple TV, that same thing. There'll be a screensaver using your photos and the time will be drawn, the data will be drawn not on the subject so that you can see it. It's a little thing, but they are putting that to use. They've got a bunch of you can pause your rings so you can give yourself a rest day, which is amazing that they couldn't do that before, but they can do that now. They've got a whole workout stress indicator kind of thing where they judge
I like that.
how difficult
really cool.
your workout is. And
that's
they're
important
using some,
for old men like me, because you youngsters, you want to get 100, you want to get into your aerobic zone at 170 beats per minute. That would kill me. So having it know where my ideal training zone is and showing me that is actually really valuable. Feature.
And for a lot of workouts, it'll actually guess how, based on the workout, how stressful was this? Were you pushing hard or were you not?
Perfect.
And you can also override that and say, no, this was actually brutal because I'm feeling a little under the weather. And it will adjust that. And then it gives you a sense of sort of are you on track or are you slacking or whatever? Or are you pushing too hard? And that's something that they've tried to build that is interesting. So yeah, there's a bunch of things in the nooks and crannies. That first hour was basically WWDC. And then that second hour was the AI announcements. And you can imagine in a usual WWDC, that first hour would have been an hour and a half or an hour and 45. And so a lot of stuff got put into one of those little bento box slides or not even mentioned at all.
Like RCS.
And, yeah, exactly. Because again, they have other videos, they have other stuff that they want to push, and it is a marketing event, right? And if you showed the stock graph, it did what was intended to do, which was, and I think refute an assumption a lot of people made that Apple was so far behind that when Gurman was talking about them doing a ChatGPT deal, I think a lot of people felt like Apple was so far behind they were going to use ChatGPT to drive their AI stuff. And so when they saw that ChatGPT is almost an afterthought and everything else is built with Apple's own models, I think a lot of people who assumed that Apple was further behind were relieved. And that was the point. So it's the watch is nice and all, but that's not about our stock price. Let's not do that. We're going to focus on AI and the rest of the stuff we'll catch up later.
Incidentally, the Gurman also said they're continuing to negotiate with Google for the use of the Gemini. I keep saying Gemini because I'm an old man.
Like a space man.
Yeah, because it was Gemini before Apollo and after
Wally
Mercury.
Schirra.
Yeah. Wally Schirra and Gemini. Anyway, Gemini. Great story in Business Insider, which said in April, as recently as April, Apple was begging Google for more TPUs, the tensor processing units designed for training artificial intelligence. The alternative to NVIDIA's products. Here's the story. Apple's request created a scramble inside Google in April when Googlers became aware of technical issues that could have stopped them from delivering what Apple wants on time. It's called an OMG internally, a Google term for one-off urgent incidents that don't quite warrant a code red. A war room was convened inside Google. So, while they didn't mention Google, they talked about OpenAI. They're using. It's interesting. They're using Google. They may also be using AWS.
They're using to train their models, right? Not to run, not to run them, but to train them, to do the training on them. It is. It's really interesting. I think. I'm sure you guys talked about this last week. It's been a blur, but like I was struck by how everybody was like, "Oh, Apple's way behind on AI, and OpenAI is this." Everybody's talking about OpenAI and their deal with Microsoft and all their boardroom shenanigans, but like they have incredible power and value, and they're like the big new thing in tech. And Apple was like all behind. And yet, if you look at that presentation, Apple's like, "Oh yeah, we've got OpenAI. It's turned off by default.
Right.
There's a warning every time you use it, and there's a warning label at the bottom with every result." It's like it is the most at arm's length partnership I think since they did the Motorola Rocker and Steve Jobs was like not interested in that phone at all. It's a little like that, where they're like, we have to have it and it's over there. And then they were also at pains to say, oh no, and it's not the only one. We'll also have others, including Google Gemini down the road, probably. So don't get too excited about
Sam
OpenAI.
Did you see Sam though? Sam was at the event.
I didn't see him. He was there.
Yeah.
He was there, but it's the least exciting and exuberant partnership announcement I've seen in a very long time.
By the way, I got to give credit to Hugh Langley at Business Insider. One other little tidbit: Apple at Google has earned the name Bigfoot among Google Cloud employees because of how much Google data centers it uses.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that shows you like the difference between like when Apple talks about benefiting from AI as a company versus Google and like and other companies like Amazon talking about benefiting from AI. Google is, you could say, definitely ahead of Apple in breadth because they're not just about making the Google Assistant smarter or adding features to their phone operating system. They want to be in the business of, hey, look, any company who wants, or any developer, large scale, small scale, global scale, military, nation state, if you need AI software and services, we have the compute power that you can borrow in order to get that sort of stuff. Whereas Apple can focus on just the stuff they need to do. So you could just say it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. And as cheap as it is to say that one company is ahead of another, Apple is ahead in the sense that they can focus and they can just do the things that bring value to the product and bring value to the users. Whereas cloud is really what everyone else is about. I mean, a lot of people don't even understand that Microsoft's number one source of revenue now is cloud.
Oh yeah,
a cloud compute.
That's what put them above Apple.
It makes as much money as their next three contributors combined, including Windows, including Office, including Xbox combined. It's like $40 billion.
That's also true for Amazon. AWS is the powerhouse, the secret powerhouse.
So that's why you can't. It's cheap to say that Apple has suddenly caught up in one stroke, or gee, Apple's still behind because they can't do this. No, they're businesses that they have a business model that is, this is what we need to do.
And I will give credit to Apple because what they're known for, and I said this last week, is productizing. And what they did, instead of saying, ooh, AI, smart, AGI, they productize it to show here's how you're going to use it in very straightforward ways. Yep. And I think that's what people wanted from Apple, and I think that's what Apple does best.
And it's again, also, it was just quickly, it was also a very smart move for them to include OpenAI in the way they did and mention Gemini the way they did, because one of their biggest fears in an AI future is that the iPhone just becomes yet another platform that runs an OpenAI app, or just yet another platform that runs a Gemini app. This is the exact same stuff that they were talking about, like in all the discovery that came about during a couple of different lawsuits. They can't let the iPhone become just another platform that an app runs on. And so this is partly why they're saying, hey, look, and if there are features that OpenAI is delivering or Google is delivering that we don't deliver, don't worry, we're integrating it. So you can still be part of the iPhone family.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things is that the ChatGPT and Gemini and everything else, that's a release valve for them that says you can do anything with AI that you want. So they don't, now it takes that pressure to do anything fast out of their purview. They can sit there and focus on what can we do with the phone? What can we do with our own cloud? And then we have this little release that every time we can't quite get to there right now, we can just let you go out into the outer, outside of the walled garden. You can wander out there really quickly, but we'll warn you that you're going through that door. But you can go out. But we're not going to keep you here. We're not limiting you to what's in the walled garden. We'll let you go out there. the advantage for them is that they can keep on building, so they can keep on adding what the device can do. They can keep on adding what the what the cloud can do. So they can keep on backfilling all the things that most people are using AI for, using huge amounts of revenue and huge amounts of dollars to train these models with potentially licensed and controlled environments, to make them smarter. One of the things that I think is interesting as you look long term, and we've talked about in the past, is what happens if you're just allowing AI to just kind of wander around. What happens when AI starts eating a lot of its own output, and Apple could theoretically build something that isn't doing that, that's managing it. So I think that there's also, it could mean, like, we're going to see what happens with the iPhone sales this fall, but of course I think it's the 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max are the only ones they say will work with this. So it could be a bumper crop of sales this fall if people say, oh, well, I can't, or over the next year, as these AI tools come out, and oh, by the way, they're not available on your phone. It might, as Apple continues to do more and more on the device, it gives us something other than the camera to make a decision about whether we should buy a new phone. Because right
Jason,
now,
did they address that in your briefings? The fact that none of this stuff's going to run on old hardware.
No, I mean, it's pretty clear though, right? Like,
were they pressed on that?
I mean,
it seems like they've skated. They've basically skated.
They have a flat answer. I mean, Macs, it's all the way back to M1, and iPads, it's all the way back to M1. And then the problem is the phones. And I think this is one of the truest signs that they are not, that this happened fast, is that it takes a while to build the iPhone stuff, and they have the 3 nanometer architecture going on. And as a result, iPhone 15 non-Pro won't work.
That seems to be a RAM issue, I think. I think it is a RAM issue, but it's tied to, they can qualify those devices, right? So the all the M series on the iPad and the iPhone and the Mac, and then the iPhone 15 Pro. I'm sure if they had known this was coming when they locked the specs of the iPhone 15, they would have considered doing something different, but they didn't. And so it ends up here. But I think this feels real. I think everybody feels like this is a real gating that makes sense. But we'll see. It's not just Alex to make more money. It is something that is required by hardware. I thought they would get more heat from Apple's fans. That my iPhone 14 is not good enough, huh?
This fall that may yet happen, but I think that Apple's got a pretty good story about why it's this way. It's because of the needs of AI. One detail that I was surprised by, I asked them, because the idea of Apple Intelligence is there's a thing that decides whether it needs to do it on device or whether it needs to do it in the secure compute cloud, right? And I asked, so if I'm an M1 Mac, and I look at something and I go, oh boy, I can't do that. I'm going to put that in the cloud. And if I'm an M2 Ultra Mac or an M3 Mac or an M4 iPad, do I look at that same thing and say, oh, I'm modern, I can do this myself, I don't need the cloud? And they said, absolutely not. In this first round of AI, of Apple Intelligence stuff, every device is doing the same things on device and the same things off device. There's no differentiation. Now, my assumption is that over time, that'll change, right? But right now, that's what they're saying. So it may be that down the road, there are things that older devices, in order to keep compatibility consistent, will farm out to the cloud, and a newer device will just do it faster and do it on device. But right now, I think that with Neural Engine and RAM and Apple Silicon, they've got like some specific gating factors, and they're not willing to go further back. Because I'm sure somebody could say, look, I've got a Mac Pro with a Xeon processor and all this RAM, and why can't I run this stuff? And the answer is basically, you don't have Apple Silicon, and realistically, Apple is not going to go back and write an Intel version of all this stuff.
And the other thing is that you're not usually selling to the person who bought the 14. I mean, there's a lot of people who have 14 that bought the 15, or 15 that'll buy the 16. But the big we have to remember there's 100 or hundreds of millions of people who have something older than the 14 or the 13 or the 12. And as you start to sweeten that pot, and these are the people who may not think that the camera is enough to upgrade for. Most people that I know just look at the camera and just wait to see what are the new things in the camera, and should I get it? where if they start seeing some of their friends doing some of the AI, some of the Genmoji, some of the AI, some of the other things. I mean, a lot of people are predicting that kids are going to really want the upgrade so that they have the cool new thing. So I think that it's really going from the 12s and the 11s and the 10s as well. That's a huge reservoir of untapped revenue when it comes to doing those things. And as the AI finally, it's because right now we're getting to the point where you're not going to do much more with the camera. I mean, the camera is kind of leveling off as to how many upgrades you can give to it. If you then start to now have AI starting to pick up, you've got another 5 or 10 years of neural, computes and all kinds of other stuff that's doing more and more on the phone. And again, they have their own cloud that can do more and more on the cloud to a point where that ChatGPT still very useful, but may only exist in 2 or 3% of what people want, out of the thing. And Apple can keep on slowly backfilling that over years without having to, and they still have the release that you can go into, but they could backfill it where they're doing most of it in that private cloud. And then if that private cloud, if the public cloud, if the ChatGPTs and the Geminis degrade it all because of the online sources, people become more touchy about privacy. All those things play to Apple's strengths.
Yeah, and that's another reason why branding this as Apple Intelligence was such a smart move. I'm certain that that's going to be part of the branding of all new phones, all new devices. It's not going to be marketed as the iPhone 16. It's going to be the iPhone 16 with Apple Intelligence, so that you know which devices that are in the product line can support these new features and which ones are going to make you wish you spent another $500.
By the way, Apple is apparently, according to Mark Gurman, not giving OpenAI money for the use of ChatGPT. They're just going to they get paid by just being nominated or something.
Well, I think you get something more value than money: exposure.
Well, but the thing is that there are people. I mean, if you're going to use the ChatGPT and you're going to use it over and over again, and you want the pro version,
I have the app
for $20 a month.
Yeah, I use the app already.
Yeah, you can pay and link it in and get more features, and presumably Apple will, take a percentage of that, but ChatGPT or OpenAI gets to do that. And that's all true. It's an interesting move, right? Because it is paying for exposure essentially, because it's costing them, but it
costs them a lot. It's not a cheap
alignment
thing. Yeah.
Alignment is important. Like their arch rival is Google, and Google's got its own thing, and Google owns the other smartphone platforms. So OpenAI really wants to be on the iPhone. So I can see why they would want to do that. And they're playing a long game, right? And the long game is presumably that you'll find a way to monetize all the AI queries, at which point it becomes more of a search engine style thing where they actually want to pay Apple to have access to Apple's customers because Apple's customers are good and they are going to generate a bunch of traffic. But in the short term, I do wonder if this is what's holding up Apple making deals with other AI providers, because this is such a sweet deal for Apple where they don't have to pay.
Gurman says Apple's deal with OpenAI is not exclusive. They are already discussing offering Google's Gemini chatbot as an additional option. That'll happen later this year. And they've been in talks with Anthropic as a potential chatbot partner. This is Gurman's take on it, and I think he's right here. Eventually, Apple aims to make money from AI by striking revenue-sharing agreements whereby it gets a cut from AI partners that monetize results in chatbots on Apple platforms. The company believes that AI could chip away at the billions of dollars it gets from its Google search deal, because users will favor chatbots and other tools over search engines. I'm already using Arc Search instead of Google on the iPhone. Apple will need to craft new arrangements to make up for the shortfall, says Gurman. I think that's accurate. That's thinking ahead.
Right. Exactly. They also mentioned the idea of specialty chatbots, which isn't something we've talked about a lot, but like they foresee a possible future where there are expert AI resources out there that have been trained on specific categories, and that they'll have the ability, if you ask Siri for something that is in a particular area of expertise, it may actually say, would you like me to use this third-party chatbot that is an expert in that area, and do it that way, which is also kind of interesting to like spread it around a little bit.
Yeah, and I know that for me, my search patterns, I've probably dropped in half since I had ChatGPT. I ask a lot of details and a lot of things that it's not so much that I have less subjects. It's just that I dig into things a bunch and then I do a little searching, but a lot of contextual stuff I get from ChatGPT very quickly. And I find it to be, and again, a lot of it has to do with how you ask the question, how you structure that question, how do you, the hallucinations become a lot less when you know how to ask, which turns out to be the case in the real world too. When you know what to ask for, you get better answers. And so so I think that is going to be the case. And I think that I've already played with some models that are trained on very specific, pieces of work. And, obviously they're a lot more accurate, and they can give you also exactly where they found those. So they can say, this is the answer. I ask a natural language question. I get a natural language answer, and I get a big bibliography of all the places that if I want to read deeper, it's already there. And so I think that combination is a really strong one to when you're trying to learn something.
All right, let's take a little break. Andy Ihnatko, Alex Lindsay, and the return of the wandering Jason Snell, our prodigal son. We will break out the fatted calf and talk some more about this and everything that happened, including a surprise announcement or a breaking news story from The Information, plus Margaret Vestager in the EU. She's mad as hell, and she's not going to take it anymore. And so is Steven Spielberg. We'll tell you why he threw his Apple Watch to the ground. All that coming up on MacBreak Weekly. But first, a word from Wix Studio. They gave me 1 minute only, to tell you about Wix Studio, the web platform for agencies and enterprises. So here are a few things you can do from start to finish in a minute or less on Studio. Adapt your designs for every device with responsive AI. Wow. Expand Wix Studio's pre-made solutions with a back-end and front-end APIs. Generate code and troubleshoot bugs with built-in AI code assistance. Switch up the styling of hundreds of web pages. I'm talking fonts, layouts, colors, all with a click. Add no-code animations and gradient backgrounds right in the editor. Start a design library. Package your code and UI in reusable full-stack apps. Oh, and one more big one: deliver everything your client needs in one smooth handover. All right, my time's up, but the list keeps on going. Take a look at Wix Studio. I think you'll be very impressed. See for yourself. Go to Wix, Wix.com/studio. Wix.com/studio. There's also a link on our show notes if you don't want to do any typing. Wix.com/studio. We thank him so much for supporting MacBreak Weekly.
Leo, can I say something about your reads?
What is that?
You're so good at it.
Oh, thank you.
I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. No, I just noticed it because I've been walking a lot more. I'm trying to get back into shape, and so I've been walking an hour and a half a day. So I'm listening to a lot more podcasts than I did in the past, because I don't drive or anything else. And I get into these podcasts and these horrible ads that just jam into the middle of the show. It's like you're listening to something.
We do it too now, unfortunately. We have to do it too.
But like you have real ads like
I know we try to convince people that's better. Host read ads are better than producer read ads, or
it's so much better.
Or
like
direct
it's dramatically better.
I agree.
It's dramatically better. Like it's just and I just noticed it while you were talking. I was just like, oh, this is so much nicer than listening to ads being dropped into the show, because I oftentimes that's the end of my listening of that podcast.
Yikes!
Ever. Like as soon as I get hit with it, I'm like, oh, this is going to be one of those podcasts. And I just stop. I have 40 podcasts sitting on.
Yeah, there's so many. Yeah.
I was like, this isn't going to, because I just don't. I'm
wondering if Jason noticed that I rephrased it when I said, I was talking about Wix Studio. I said it's the web platform, not the. And of course, you remember the days when KNVR became the.
You mean it's KNVR 680,
the sports leader. And I take credit for the instead of the. It really emphasizes the one and only, right?
You really hear the underline.
The sports leader. Yeah, that was me. You can thank me for that. Do they still do? They don't still do that though. Probably.
Yeah, they still do that.
They do. I want royalties. So what? You were there 2 days. There must be more that they told you that we would like to hear. What else? And I don't know what it is, so I'm going to let you choose.
Oh boy, I don't know. It is, it's a bunch of stuff that, again, it's like, why did it take so long to do things like put the icons wherever you want on the screen?
You know what my favorite feature is, and it's buried in accessibility in iOS 18? You can now rename Shlomo.
It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. So you can rename Ahoy Telephone to be whatever you want it to be, right?
Yeah.
You can do that.
You could actually make
also,
it Ahoy Telephone, which would be hysterical.
Yes, you can, but you can also have that, like, you can have commands that do stuff, like run a shortcut and have a custom audio command for that.
Oh, that's
so
great.
You can say, I was playing around with this yesterday, like I could select text in a document and say, make a blog post about this. I could say like
huge.
Make blog post, and it will hear make blog post and go boop and run the shortcut and do it. So you can do custom activation words. The only catch with having your assistant be triggered by it is it has to be triggered, wake up, and then wait for your command. So the lady's name, it's always listing for that, and it patches in whatever command follows it, right? So you'll go, hey lady, do a thing, and it'll be like, yes, I'm doing the thing.
Another good
but
one.
For this, if you say Shlomo, you're gonna have to say, hey Shlomo, and it's gonna go boop boop, and then you got to do the thing. You got to do it. So it's a little different.
That's fair. You do that with other voice assistants now. You wake them and then you trigger them. That's fair.
Yeah. So that's
this is built into accessibility, but the good news is Apple often does that with features that it's eventually going to make available generally. And you know, if you know about it, you can go do it. Is that in the beta yet? Are you using the iOS 18?
That is in the beta. It's not. I don't know if it's really working great, but it is in there.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's actually in there. And then like the icons, like I don't know, like it's great. It's this constant thing, which is, do I applaud Apple for doing a thing that they should have done 5 years ago or 10 years ago? Because on the one hand, at least they did it. On the other hand, why didn't they do it 10 years ago? I don't know, but the custom, you could custom orient widgets actually before, but now actual app icons, and then the idea that you can lock specific apps, and that you can hide apps and people can't see what apps are in the little hidden apps folder until you authenticate. I think that's all good.
That's cool. Yeah.
There's a bunch of little quality of life things.
Can you see the hidden folder? I mean, like, yeah.
No, the way, or you can see that there is a hidden folder. I think maybe at all times, but you can't see what's in it. What happens is you go into I think the way it works is you go into the app library and it does an authentication, and then you can see what's in that folder. But if it's locked, I don't know if you can see that the folder is there and is locked, or if you don't see the folder.
The reason I ask is because one of the things we talked about last week is the potential of someone being able to have Signal, let's say, and they're talking back and forth with folks, but Signal is hidden, and like law enforcement or someone else wouldn't even know that Signal was there. Like
yes,
wouldn't even know there was a hidden folder. Wouldn't know the Signal was there.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
You'd be able to. They could look at your phone all they want, but if they don't authenticate into that.
Yeah, they're not gonna see it. I don't know a lot of the details of that. Do they disappear from settings? I assume that they're going to do all of those things. It was just a little unclear from the demo because in the keynote they were blasting through, right? So they went right through it. But that is a really cool idea, and per app locking too, to be able to say, like, I want a biometric authentication before anybody can open this app. So if I hand this to my friend, they can't go, oh, don't I'm just going to open your mail, right? Yeah. Like you can, for any app, you can just lock that out. That's also great.
All right. These are all things you I'm sure do not. Have you had Springboard issues? People are saying iOS 18 beta is a little rocky still.
I mean, it's developer beta 1, people.
Yeah.
Like, don't.
No. I'm just kidding. I want you to issue the warning.
Yeah. Yes, I will do that. It's developer beta 1, people. Don't do it, because it will be rocky. It will be messy. They are revising things, and there are weird crashes and things that don't authenticate right, and apps will refuse to launch. You may need to restart. Like, developer beta 1, I mean, public beta, I would caution against, but like, if you're bold, go for it. But developer beta 1, don't do it. Like, just don't do it. However, here's a plot twist. VisionOS 2 beta 1 is better than VisionOS 1 point whatever. Just go ahead. If you've got a Vision Pro, why do you even have a Vision Pro? It's to be on the cutting edge. Just put it on there. It's so much better. The Bora Bora beach environment is awesome. The new gesture to bring up the home screen or to see what time it is really great. You can reorder the home screen. What was that, Alex?
So you can bring everything up by turning it over. You don't have to look up.
The gesture they invented is really clever. Yeah. So what you do is you look at your hand. Have you ever really looked at your hand, man? You hold out your hand and you look at it. And a little circle appears that's the home button, and you basically like just go boop and it'll go home. But if you look at your hand and then flip it over like you're going to check your watch, a little thing appears and it's got the time, the battery level. If you tap and hold while looking at it, you can adjust the master volume of the system. And if you tap while looking at it, it brings up Control Center. So just, I mean, it's a little esoteric as a gesture, but once you internalize it, it's great. So there's a lot of really nice features in watchOS 2.
Do you ever feel like you're learning some skills that you may really not be able to use much in the future?
No, it's going to be great, Leah. What are you talking about?
Nothing.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Nothing.
Did they talk to you? Did they talk to you at all about the Blackmagic camera?
They did not. Sorry.
We're super excited.
They knew I wasn't you, but if I was you, they would have talked a lot about it. But I did not get.
Alex, should I start streaming
Twit? There was no VisionOS one either.
In Spatial?
In 3D?
It would be hard to do with Zoom inputs, but I think that we'll definitely. I mean, I'm already doing some spatial streaming, and I find it to be like with just the phone. You know, Stream Voodoo now has a phone app that will stream directly to a headset, and so we've been starting to test that, and it's pretty cool. Like it's pretty cool. Like it only works in a very it's not like you're going to shoot football with it. It works at 5 to 15 feet. Like that's why I think
this podcast would be perfect. We just put one in the middle there. You don't have to come to the studio.
Well, the hard part is figuring out what do I look like in 3D. Unless I was able to send you, I could send you.
No, that's what I'm saying. It can only work if everybody's in studio. I don't think you can have avatars or.
Although you could do it with your monitors, so you could have the monitors be there. We can do that.
But would that make it 3D? I mean, you're 2D in the monitor. I don't think there's.
But you're 3D and the monitor's 3D, so the whole thing will feel 3D. It'll feel like you're sitting there.
Okay,
that'd be kind of fun to test.
Like you're a live audience.
We did that how many years ago? 15 years ago with Dolby Surround audio.
I did it with an Ozo.
And we did it with that $30,000 camera that you had there.
60,000. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. And now I have a little phone that can do it. It can do it as well. Probably better.
Yeah, and to an audience of thousands, which is fantastic.
We should do. Daring Fireball did one. We should do a Twit with.
Only if we can do it better, because you were talking before the show about Daring. You felt like that one didn't get really.
I think we could do pretty well.
Okay.
I think we can be competitive. so let's
take that.
Let's maybe even look at this Sunday or next Sunday.
Oh,
no, this Sunday.
Okay.
It would have to be this.
Talk to Nito.
Do you have any guests coming? Do you have any guests coming this Sunday?
You know what we should do is we should plan it for the next time we're going to have a live studio panel.
Yeah, when you have a couple people on the panel, it'd be more fun.
We'll talk to Benito. He produces that.
Find out when that makes sense, but we can do it with the phone, and then what we can do is anybody who has a headset can watch it. It's like we can just put out a link. You put out a link and you just watch the link.
Special Vision Pro This Week in Tech Roundtable. Does it work with other headsets or is it only Vision Pro? Right now, it just works with the Vision Pro. Okay. Emmerich says he remembers the Dolby audio version and really enjoyed the surround. You had to have Dolby headphone, which fewer people had that than Vision Pro for sure. Although it worked now. Wow. Like it would work now. Because of Spatial. Spatial is easier. I could do Spatial. I might be able to do, depending on how far away, we might be able to do ambisonic to binaural. That'd be really fun. Put it in there. Somebody actually asked on the Ask the Tech Guys, and I should have asked you, but he had stuff that's Spatial, but he doesn't want to listen to it. Did you have to have an Apple thing to listen to Spatial? I said, well, it's Dolby Atmos. You're not going to get the head turn stuff. That's Apple which is super annoying in my opinion. I don't like the head turn. I won't miss that. Yeah, I don't. But you would get the surround sound from Dolby Atmos if you had a Dolby Atmos capable player, right? Yeah. Do you have to reformat the files? It has to be a format. It has to be a device that can handle it. Right. That can read it. There's a bunch of. I think VLC on the iPhone does in fact handle Dolby Atmos. Might. But but it is really a very Apple-y thing. The streaming it can be done to stream to Android and Windows, but they made a bunch of choices about what they support that make it really hard. Well, let's talk about the cross-platform RCS. It was one little tiny thing on the bento box, but I think to a lot of people, it's a very important move by Apple to support this rich communication system that is not a Google-specific system, although Google did buy one of the big RCS companies. but the phone company also has to support it. All the platforms have to support it. And by Apple moving to RCS gives them a little bit less of a lock-in with Apple Messages. Did you get to see any RCS, Jason, while you were inside the ring? No?
No.
They didn't talk about it at all?
No.
No. Okay. Why are you so dismissive? They didn't talk about it because why would they?
They're sort of being forced to do it.
They don't want to do it.
They
absolutely being forced to do it, yeah.
And aren't excited about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Will they undermine it, you think, or will they actually
here's
do
your
it
RCS. Right? And it remains to be seen. It sounds like it is sort of available on the first beta, but not like super clear right now. So it's unclear whether it's not fully
end-to-end encryption has not yet been implemented between platforms. Apple doesn't yet send read receipts for group chats, nor are the read receipts sent by Android visible in groups on the iPhone. The receipts do work in single chats. You do, I think, get the 3 dots when typing dots. The most important thing from my point of view was that the photos and the video were transmitted at a higher quality. We should point out, not full quality. Right. They're not going to be full quality, but they'll be better than they have been.
Yeah. It's still a carrier defined communications method. So they can basically put limits on these things. That's why it was hard to figure out what was the highest resolution photo you're going to get from MMS, is because AT&T will limit it to like 1.2 megapixels. Right. Verizon has a different standard.
Verizon doesn't even support RCS on the iPhone yet.
Yeah.
So,
so the people who've gotten it running through just a few black magic on the beta, they say that they've gotten it working with T-Mobile and AT&T. I'm surprised of the stuff that's actually working. I was very surprised that user on Twitter by the name of Dinak actually says it has screenshots of file transfers working, which I did not realize that these are not things that they've actually enabled for public consumption in the beta. So maybe they were just playing with their implementation, and a lot more things will happen. A lot fewer things will happen when it actually gets released. But the surprising thing is that when you look at the specification for the kind of RCS that Apple is committed to, or excuse me, that Google has said, Google said back in October on a panel that the kind of RCS that they're at least going to committing to, the business profile. And the profile itself actually doesn't demand a whole lot. It doesn't even demand read receipts or high resolution pictures. So Apple is very, very free to say, oh yeah, fine, we'll support RCS, and give us absolutely nothing. However, it looks like at least the version that they've exposed in the public beta has a lot of stuff. No end-to-end encryption, like you said, but Apple has already said that one of their sticking points is that they don't like the end-to-end encryption that Google is laying on top of RCS for the service that they're providing to carriers. And they said that at least that they were hoping to collaborate on an end-to-end encryption standard that they do like and that they can support. So they might not support end-to-end encryption at first, but maybe we'll get it in a year or 2 or 3 or whatever.
Well, that malicious compliance has not done Apple any favors in the EU, at least when it comes to the Apple Store. Apple has numerous very serious issues, according to Margareta Vestager. She talked to CNBC earlier today. Under the Digital Markets Act, they are going to, it sounds like, go after Apple and get them to modify what they've offered. We have a number of Apple issues, says Margareta Vestager. I hope I'm saying her name right. I find them very serious. I was very surprised that we would have such suspicions of Apple being non-compliant. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Apple are very important because a lot of good business happens through the App Store, happens through payment mechanisms. So, of course, even though I can't say this is not what was expected of such a company, of course, we'll enforce exactly with the same top priority as with any other business. And the conclusions of the probe, which is ongoing, will be revealed hopefully soon. According to Financial Times, Meta is also under the microscope for not complying in the spirit of the DMA. There are serious fines, but of course, both Apple and Meta would have a chance to respond to any complaint by the EU.
Apple didn't really have a lot of incentive to over-deliver. Yeah, so you under-deliver, you error correct based on what they say you can and can't do. Apple probably knows lots of things they could do, more than what the EU knows. And so they were like, well, here's the minimum. You
Right.
tell us what you want. And the fines of, I think it's $1 billion or something like that. The
10%.
time it takes to adjudicate this entire a case to go from start to end, if it ends up being $1 billion, if it stays $1 billion, Apple will make more money in the EU than it cost to delay it for another year. So I think that it's, I think Apple is doing this about the way you would expect. I'm surprised that she's surprised.
Yeah. I think we all expected that. This is a brand new, very, very sweeping set of laws. It's going to take time for people to figure out what's workable, what's not workable. And of course, Apple, you're right. There's no chance that they were going to accidentally over comply. They were going to they're going to test the electric fence, find out which ones give you less of a jolt, and then see if you can break it there. What was interesting that, so this is based on a Financial Times report from last week. And their sources basically say that the center of the EU's complaint is all about steering obligations, like the ability to for developers to reach out to its customers, customers of its apps, and offer them special deals and special incentives outside of Apple, which doesn't seem like a really technical thing for Apple to comply with. So hopefully this is something where they're like, okay, fine, we'll put this new boilerplate into the old boilerplate. But it seems like an easy thing for them to comply with and give up on.
In a related report today, the Financial Times says Apple and the EU have probably come to terms on the tap and go payments probe. So this is a kind of an example of what down the road you might expect from Apple. Apple has offered, and the EU apparently is about to accept, providing developers with free access to the NFC on technology on iOS devices without having to use Apple Pay or Apple Wallet. That was the bone of contention. Brussels officials, the Financial Times says, have been testing these measures, which Apple has offered to keep in place for a decade. Settlement likely in the next few weeks, said three people with knowledge of the matter. It's probably the same three people they talked to last week, I would guess. This would avoid sanctions for Apple. So it looks like Apple has, in fact, settled with the EU over one of the things the EU was complaining about, which is the use of the NFC chip in the iPhone, which is good. I don't have high expectations, but it would be nice if Apple extended these concessions to the world, the entire world, instead of just the EU. But I guess each government's going to have to force them.
I mean, I think we can go back. Like if someone told me to do something that I didn't want to do, I would do the absolute minimum.
Well, they have.
so that they have. I mean,
is it a good look though? I mean,
whole approach though.
I guess I understand that, but.
I mean, if you ask me to do something that I think is dumb and stupid and I don't want to do it, whether it is or not.
Well, but the complaint was if we open NFC, it's going to be a security nightmare. Well, they're now doing it in the EU. Let's see if it's a security nightmare. I mean, I think that their reasons for not doing it are BS. And this is just going to show it up as BS. And they're still going to not going to do anything about it. Well,
Well, wait, on that subject, why do you suppose that if they were facing regulatory pressure to support RCS in China and elsewhere, why not just support it in China? Why not just support it in whatever country that's requiring it? I imagine that this has been a long, long argument inside Apple for years and years and years, and this was finally the straw that allowed the one side to say, "Look, it's time. Let's just give people good quality photos."
It also may just really be complicated because you have people messaging across borders. So if I'm messaging somebody in China, they have RCS and I don't. No, that's not going to work. Whereas payments, you're either in Brussels or you're not. So I think maybe it's easier to geographically restrict that.
And also U.S. regulators use RCS as one of the things that they're talking about. So getting ahead of it and saying, hey, we're doing it, and look at what we're doing and everything else, while you see them continue to race forward on tools for messages that aren't going to work in RCS. I mean, what you're probably going to see is an explosion of extra tools and cool little things that, because again, we should not understate how important 87% of kids under 18. If they can hold that for a couple more years, that's a devastating impact for decades because they're not going to leave the platform.
Apple is also a little bit split personality. So the Steve Jobs side of Apple says, screw you. I'm going to do as little as I possibly can, and I'm going to try to get around this. Tim Cook is much more of a diplomat. In fact, the rumor is, according to Apple Insider, that he snuck out of WWDC early on Thursday to meet with Donald Trump. That wasn't just him alone. There were 60 other business executives in that meeting. But Cook's very much aware that if Trump gets elected in the fall, that he's going to have to deal with a Trump administration. And so that's something they want to get ahead of.
I don't even think it's have to deal with. I mean, I think that the problem that Tim Cook has is that politically, I think he's probably leaning much more towards Biden. But from Apple's perspective, Trump would probably be better than everything that Biden has put out as far as FTC, SEC, all those things.
The billionaires love the Donald because
so I'm just saying,
they love the Donald more than they love democracy, but they love the Donald.
I think that Tim, I think he probably leans more towards almost every policy that, other than policies towards Apple, almost every policy the Biden administration stands for. But I think that he is shrewd in the sense that if
that's what I'm saying. He's playing
Trump winning is probably good for most of these things because most of these things will all disappear for 4 years.
Come to the Mac Pro factory, right? Like it's politics. It's politics, and Tim Cook has to be a politician the size that Apple is, for sure.
It was, and I think if Tim Cook were to even saying, I'm sorry, I am literally scheduled to give a talk for the future of my company that hour, Mr. Trump, I cannot be at this meeting. He would see that as an immense slight.
Oh yeah, you can't do that. No.
Yeah, and it wasn't. Remember, it wasn't just that Tim Cook allowed the factory to be used as a PR thing for a Trump appearance. It was also at the other, I think the first couple of months in office when he had hey, look at me meeting with all these tech CEOs, just like another business titan. Guess who was seating literally at the right hand of Donald? Tim Cook. Yeah. Last year he did. It is his philosophy. Last year he gave an interview with GQ and he was asked questions about that kind of thing, and he said, quote, I actually think it's more important to engage when there's disagreement than when there's agreement, which is a very, very smart thing to do, particularly if you're a CEO, and definitely not something that Elon Musk agrees with even partially.
He's been toasting Xi Jinping as well. I mean, this is what you do if you're the CEO of a mega corporation. As distasteful as it might be, here's the, I've been teasing it all day, the exclusive from The Information. This came out this morning. Apple suspends work on next Vision Pro, focused on releasing cheaper models in late 2025. They've told apparently at least one supplier, this is from Wayne Ma and Chianer Lu, that it has suspended work on its next high-end Vision headset. An employee at a manufacturer that makes key components for the Vision Pro said. Now, this is a pretty flimsy story, but
yeah, the supply chain. I mean, that is a flimsy, even for a supply chain rumor. That's flimsy because we don't really know. They told you that, did they? They're it's not you, it's me. They told them, and then they went. But I will say, I mean. Is there anybody who doesn't think the right approach for Apple going forward is to try to get a VisionOS device down in price from $3,500 instead of making another high spec model that's maybe even more expensive than that? Absolutely, they should be focused on making a more affordable model, especially if they think they're going to have not just apps, but much more in the way of content and entertainment coming and people building immersive experiences and 3D movies and other 3D content. You want right? There are going to be things that are going to be intriguing, and then people are going to see the price tag and they're going to blanch. And if you can get that, even if you got it down to 1,000 or 1,500, even, it would be a better argument to make than 3,500. So if they could do it, right? Because the big cost is those displays, but if they could cut the costs and make it cheaper, I feel like that's absolutely what their priority one should be.
I think the biggest warning sign has been Vision Pro has been in the hands of any developer who wants one for months now, and we've yet to see anything. I don't even want to call it a killer app, but an app that emphatically says, "Wow, I'm so glad I bought this. I can't do this with any. I can't do this with any other device on any other platform. Certainly can't do this on my iPad. Certainly can't do this on my MacBook." It looks like it's a very, very, very slow process of having the developer community and users figure out what is this for, apart from, hey, cool, I've got a huge virtual display, which is a very useful feature. Hey, cool, I've got 3D gaming and 3D experiences. Again, very, very cool, very, very interesting. But Apple has yet to really make the argument for, yes, but why does this have to be a $3,500 device? Why can I not do the same things with a device that costs half as much, a third of much, a sixth as much? A lot of people are. I have used the Meta, and I've used the Vision Pro, and at least, just for a half hour to an hour, but I can appreciate that the Vision Pro is much, much better, but it's not the reason why I would spend an extra $2,000, $2,500 on the Vision Pro. I would go home with this other device and $2,000 in my pocket.
Interesting. Maybe a more interesting tidbit from this Wayne Ma story in the information is that in November, shortly after Apple announced the Vision Pro, Meta began work on a high-end headset, internally codenamed La Jolla. They had. I have the Meta Quest, or I gave it away. Did somebody take that, John? Do you know, in our Leo's garage sale? Did anybody get the Meta? Did you get it? No, you don't know who got it. Anyway, I used it a couple of times. My son used it a lot more. He played that football game. But I asked him when we were cleaning out. I said, "Hey, do you want me to keep this Meta Quest Pro?" And he said, "No." $1,500. So, but apparently Meta's been building another more expensive one. They had killed the Quest Pro. So maybe Apple is, driving a market of some kind. There is one more piece I'll add before I get to you, Andy. The company is still working on releasing a more affordable Vision Pro before the end of 2025. A person involved in its supply chain and a person involved in the manufacturing of the headset said. So now they have two sources on that one. Apple had originally planned to divide it into, as you know, two, a high-end line and a low-cost line. And now at least we know for sure that the low-cost line is still planned with fewer features before the end of 2025. Andy?
Yeah. I just wanted to quickly say that it's an unusual market in that there just seems to be two ends to it and no middle. You can see the
that's
market
a good way
has
to say
said
it.
that,
Yeah, that's true.
The market has said that if you give me a good $500 general gaming and VR and virtual display device, you'll sell it. If you've got a good $3,500, $4,000 high end device that you'll be able to sell that to. You'll be able to sell that to industry. You'll be able to sell it for training. You'll be able to sell it to the medical industry. You'll be able to sell it to, again, high-end volume users that need it for custom operations. But there's no place in the middle for an expensive device that is targeted towards consumers. It doesn't seem to be there just yet. So, yeah, I would be surprised if Apple got out of the high-end market entirely, because that's a great thing about the companies that need to buy 1,000 of something to cut their training costs. They will spend $3,500 a copy if they can justify the savings in training expenses, because training expenses are killer to those industries. But again, they still they're not getting the sort of thing where you look at you go to Apple Park. There's a big event where everybody's there for keynote, and you see lots and lots of people wearing Vision Pros in the audience. I didn't see many. Don't think I saw any. Whereas the first Google I/O after Google Glass was out, you saw plenty of people wearing Google Glass. I don't know if that's particularly significant, but I thought that's interesting.
I will say that I find the headset actually easier to wear than the Google Glass. For some reason, I wore the Google Glass a lot. And the problem was it always felt like it was pulling down on one side of my head, and it just made me a little crazy over time. So, but I think that the challenge that Meta's had, the challenge that Apple's still having, is ecosystem. And so the issue is how do you develop content for a headset? And it has still not been that easy to do. I think that we see hints at what's possible. So I think that part of that ecosystem, I think, Apple is not the first company to ask Blackmagic to make stereo cameras or 360 cameras or other cameras. Apple was just able to get that over the hump, of them doing that. And that's going to be a big piece of it, because seeing video, I know that most people haven't seen that yet, but seeing video at 90 frames a second, 8K per eye is going to look way different than what people are used to in this 30 and 60 frame per second, 4K per eye. And it will be something that people that will be hard to do, almost impossible to do at a lower price, because it requires the processing to see it. And for many people, it won't make sense to do that. But I think there's going to be a large enough market for that there will be enough to make the headset. The other side of that is you see hints like, so for instance, I still think that Jigspace is a perfect hint to what is possible when it comes to education and training and so on and so forth. The problem is Jigspace is way too expensive to develop for, and it is difficult and it requires like talking to them. I mean, they should be building that kind of functionality into Keynote, and so, Keynote now takes USDZ, and Pages now takes a lot of, USDZ, being able to do a simple explode operation, which means that I click on a button and a device opens up in pieces or breaks or goes to another configuration is the kind of thing that becomes really interesting when you can walk around, when you can talk to other people, if you look at the Jigspace stuff there, and it works, and it is one of the most impressive apps on the Vision Pro, in my opinion, which is that you can turn some things on, some things off, make them partially transparent, blow them up. You can draw in 3D around the objects, and they're working on collaboration with that as well. But it is for when it comes to education, when it comes to understanding how to do something, when it comes to those kinds of things, these are the things there. But right now the problem is that it's expensive and painful to make the content for that operation. If it's something that anybody could throw together in Keynote, it would change. I think it would change how people look at those, about what that looks like.
Yeah, I borrowed Micah's Vision Pro and did the race car Jigspace. It was very cool. I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
But
see, my issue is that my question is that is Apple just barking up the wrong tree to begin with? That Wired had presented yet another one of these articles I've seen by people who are using the Meta Wayband Wayfarers and praising them to high heavens. It's not a VR thing. It's just simply a pair of glasses with cameras in them and really, really good audio embedded into the side pieces. Cost $300. It looks like a pair of Roy Orbison Wayfarers. It doesn't look like particularly weird, but the pieces that I've been reading about have got me kind of excited about maybe getting a pair to try them out, because the intelligence of just being able to say, hey Moisha, I think it's a different trigger word. But hey Moisha, like, what am I looking at right now? Or what kind of car is this that I'm looking at? And being able to give you an answer, to just simply, as I've been saying for a long time, talking to a smart assistant through audio is a big deal, and adding a camera to that is a bigger deal. And you talk about something that is you can wear, you don't feel like an idiot doing it. It provides a very, very useful function, even just as an audio device that you're wearing while listening to podcasts or whatever while you're walking or working out. That's a very, very useful
really like
thing.
the Wayfarers.
Yeah, and add just a little tiny little embedded screen, kind of like what Google Glass had, so it can simply give me answers that I don't necessarily have to listen to. Give me visual answers like here, forward and to the left. Here's some directions for you. That is a great product, and so I'm not saying that it's a waste of time to think about. Oh, but when the greater content comes from Vision Pro, everybody's going to love that, and then the higher frame rates and the higher resolution is going to be really, really great, and the higher responsibility. I don't doubt any of that, but the question comes back. I'm just not convinced that Apple has even figured out the right way to go with this kind of technology. $500. I think they're not developing anything that anybody is going to want to put on their face for any real amount of time. Whereas this is something that just like you see people wearing their AirPods without even worrying about what they look like with AirPods everywhere. This is the sort of technology that could take that to the next level. And I really wish that Apple were looking at that instead, because it seems like a much more...
Why instead, though? Those products are not even remotely alike. One of them is a computing product that's basically a VR product that's converging one way, and the other is essentially AirPods with a camera that you wear on your face. I don't think it's an instead. I think both of those things are converging at the same place, which is your face, from different directions, but they're completely different product categories.
Of course.
I do think once Apple gets their story, sorry, I said her name, the Shlomo story in order with their
all of our assistants have to have names from Fiddler on the Roof. I'm just saying, it's got it's just a rule.
It does unlock for you a lot. When they get that story in place, it unlocks a lot of wearable stuff that they're not currently doing. AirPods has been a place where Apple's actually really been ahead. I think I would actually be surprised if Apple weren't trying out the idea of something like the Meta Ray-Bans, because they could use their audio
the
tech,
AirPods are halfway there. Yeah.
And then you get a camera, because there are reports about like, oh, they're trying to put cameras on AirPods. It's like, how many people have hair or facial hair or actual hair that just cover, like, the place
Make
to do
them
it
glasses.
is up here, right?
Yeah.
And so but that's a wearables, home and accessories category that I think makes sense for them to expand beyond the AirPods. I think that is a direction that they probably are experimenting with internally. It's just, they're coming. There's the lightweight accessory device you wear on your body, and then there's the computing device that ideally gets lighter and lighter and lighter, and eventually is something you can carry around. They seem they're coming at it from very different things. So I don't think it's an either or, but I do agree Apple should be really interested in getting a camera into the loop, because audio is nice, but if your AI assistant can see what you're looking at, that unlocks a lot of potential. Whether there's a screen in that thing or not, I feel like there's huge potential there once it can see as well as hear.
And I think that for me, and I don't know what Jason's experience is related, but a lot of people that I know and have an experience similar to mine is that when I put the Vision Pro on, there's one thing it doesn't do that I think is interesting, that is now in the new version that might be a little bit easier to get to, is show you what time it is. And the reason that I think that that's important is that, man, do I lose a lot of time. Like I have to be careful of putting it on, because I'll throw the Vision Pro on and like 4 hours later realize that I've been in this thing for 4 hours. I watched pieces of some movies. I played with a bunch of things I did. And because I'm able to sit there and text people, and I'm not leaving that environment, I'm texting, I'm doing other things like that. It is, I do think that they have something there, but I do think that they need more content, and content does drive things. If you want to talk to people about when do you want your new televisions to come out, it's right before the Super Bowl. Like that's when you want the fastest, and VHS won because of content. like we won't get into what content that was, but the point is that these, content drives hardware sales, and I think that the problem right now is generating that content is particularly difficult for both I think it's in some cases easier for the Vision Pro, but I think that they have to accelerate, and I think they're doing a great job with what they're doing with Blackmagic's camera. But I think that there's going to be more where they have to, being able to generate 3D pieces, being able to put those things together and not have it require a programmer, but be able to just throw these things together in Keynote and so on and so forth, or some kind of development platform is really important. And I think that that's also why books became what it was. I keep on coming back to that, but I think books could have redefined the platform, and instead they just ended up with nothing because they didn't produce the content that got people excited about it.
All right. Well, I am going to get my legs in the ready position because I'm about to pivot. And as everyone knows, that ready position is key to being mobile on your. I'm talking about the fact that Shiro Ovid, writing the Washington Post, observed that during the Apple showcase, all the presenters had their feet placed shoulder width apart, ready to leap into action. And apparently, that was called the Apple stance by a group talking about it on Twitter. But apparently, it's known as the ready position and is widely taught. Nobody taught me, but it was widely taught to public speakers, because your body is balanced and can pivot easily to address different parts of the audience. And we talked about this on Sunday, and I hadn't really noticed it, but if you look, every single presenter on stage is in the ready position. Obviously, they brought in some training. And
I think that the problem right now with all of Apple's movies, and I think it's been a problem for even the stage stuff, is that a lot of their executives look like they're trained, but they didn't get trained through to the level of mastery. So what they got trained to is to the level of understanding what the tools are. If you look at anybody who does this, when you go into that training, you're much worse, and then you get even worse and stilted. And then it drives into your lower brain, and then at some point you come out the other end, and you
takes a long time
than you did before. But that takes
time a busy executive does not have
of practice,
and there's that uncanny valley in them. You could almost, Alex, I'm sure you could do it too. You could almost assign a score to every one of the people on the Apple presentation about where they were in their journey. Because I had that same thing. In fact, I wasn't trying to make people laugh, but I made people laugh. We were watching part of I think it was the second thing, the platform State of the Union. And there was a very robotic presenter. And at one point, this presenter was finishing a sentence, and I said, pause, smile. Okay, continue. As she did that, And everybody laughed. And I'm like,
no, that's the
I said,
training.
I feel bad for her because she has not been trained enough and she is still trying to put it together. And it's hard, right? But like it gets when it can get really stilted and it can get really samey, which is the other problem. If everybody sounds like the same, even if they're like effective, it starts to be like pod people.
And they talk about this, even if you think about a pitcher or you look at a pitcher or a golfer or a quarterback, and they say they're changing their mechanics. And that is like all day, every day for a year to change their mechanics of how they throw.
And it doesn't work well at first. Yeah.
And it's horrible, and it feels very stilted, and it's not effective. And the only company that I know of that does these presentations gets through that is Salesforce. And Salesforce, but that is an enormous amount of work, and it takes it takes a close relationship with people who do like top level presentations like Tony Robbins and everything else to get to a point where you're going to actually be able to project that process. And it's not that it's just that takes, it's 2 or 3 hours a week for years to get to that point. Not like, we're going to prep for the thing. And that's the problem is Apple, I feel like they're in this uncanny valley in the middle of they're all trained and told what to do, and they're doing what they were told what to do. The unfortunate thing is that because they're recording, they could easily work through this. Half of their problem is they're not cutting fast enough. So they're kind of halfway between old school video and YouTube. And what they need to do is go full YouTube, which is start to cut faster, because you should cut around every pause. Like they should never show them sit through a teleprompter pause. If you watch carefully, you'll watch them sit through the page. The page is not moving. They're sitting through something. But in a teleprompter, this is a really common thing for people to do is they'll sit there and they'll read one section and then they're waiting for the next section, and it should just keep going smoothly. And if they're trained, they'll just keep going. A good teleprompt reader will read it as if they were saying, as if it came from their soul. But when you're starting, there's always these pauses every paragraph, and it feels like Apple pauses every sentence. And the way to get around that when someone does that is to cut. Cut to a close-up, cut to a wide, that's what YouTubers do all day, is you cut much faster than what Apple's doing. And I think it would feel better if they just cut a little faster.
I think it'd feel better if they stopped training entirely. I have a real pet peeve on this one. Teleprompter training, speaking training. It always looks bad. It always looks mechanical. You can always tell if somebody's been to Maggot. Tech TV brought in a trainer, and I said, I don't have to do this, do I? Do I have to do this? Yeah. And she said, no, you don't have to do this. I said, good. Yeah. And in fact, I don't think you should be training anybody else. This is terrible.
There are people who are really bad at it, and you want to show them on camera, and so you need to train them a little bit. I get it, but there is this sort of unification and monolith.
It's unnatural.
And
it's awful.
And it becomes very weird. But I also think that you do, like Craig Federighi is actually really good, and when he first appeared on stage, he was a disaster, and training helped him. But you're right, it does get samey. And the other thing, I know we talked about this last year, I want to mention it again. The other thing that they're doing, Alex, you might have a comment here, is they are so aggressively processing the audio of their presentation, of their dialogue,
it's
that
really
everybody
noticeable.
Seems like they're dubbed. Everybody, there are no natural sounds emanating from those people's bodies. It's just...
I'm not clear that they aren't dubbed. So we had a discussion about it, and we're not sure.
You think they're ADRing the audio?
So Jason, you've been in that top. You've been where Craig was sitting in the top of SJT, right?
Sure.
So you have been there.
Could be real echoey, yeah.
Little echoey because it's all curved glass.
Yeah,
there's no way he recorded his audio there. But the easiest way to do that, it would be to let him go ahead and do it there, drop that piece in, or do it in green screen
and loop everything
and loop everything in, and you because I'll be honest, it looks looped.
It feels super artificial. Yeah.
There's some sync issues. There's some other things there that I feel like it's being looped. The whole thing's being looped. And I think my guess is
go back to live. Please go back to live. Please.
I don't know about that.
I do know.
Now you're going too far.
Trust me.
I understand why you're saying that, though, because it is unnatural and artificial in a way that I feel like
distancing.
It is distancing. I think you could still do it not live and still have more of that flavor. But they are just like completely mashing it down. Everything.
Well, that's what happens. That's why I'm against it from day one. This is always what happens.
Yeah. I think the problem is that they're being taught that these are the rules. Like, here is how you stand. Here's what you do with your hands. Here's a metronome. I want you to talk based on this metronome, as opposed to saying that don't try not to shift from your weight from one place to another, because that makes you look kind of indecisive. Don't like wander from place to place. And it's you get so focused on here is one way of doing things that, yeah, it does look robotic. It does look something that you could do with a badly trained AI. And that's not something that Apple kind of wants. I absolutely miss the idea of getting some idea of the personalities of these people when they come up to the stage. And you're not going to put someone in front of an audience like that giving information as important as that to the future of the company without making sure that they've had some rehearsals and they've had at least somebody running through with them saying that, okay, at this point you look like you kind of got lost in the text. Here's a way you can cover that. But again, there's a way of saying that we manufacture robots that give presentations that you kind of want to avoid.
I just need to say, someone who's done a lot of, not these ones, but a lot of these. The hard part is that you can't let someone just kind of run off. I mean, you just can't make a show out of that. And so you give them some either talking. The best case is the better case is to give them talking points, and you put a talking points on the screen, and they just let them remember what they were going to say, and then they just say it. And I think that's a much more, and then what some companies do is, again, the ones that are at the very highest end, they memorize the whole thing. Like, they walk around, they do it all. It's all memorized. They're going to say it the way they're going to say it. It's like an actor on stage doing, a stage play, and they will do their monologues, and they'll figure those things out. And it feels very good. The hard part is that C-suite are not actors, and they are not good at this, and they are not. And when you watch, I mean, I would say, again, the Salesforce crew, Jensen, everybody else. there's after that, it just kind of falls off really fast, and it feels square, and whether they're standing on stage live or whether they're in record, I don't know. I mean, as someone who's watched a lot of that and watched a lot of plays and everything else, it's pretty far drop off. And the problem is that your viewing audience, we are fed high quality, well presented content on Apple TV, YouTube, everything else that we watch. And so because that's what's successful. And so the problem is these C-suite are being put into positions that, are very, very difficult for them to do well, requires enormous amounts of training that would be very expensive for them to actually get through the other end. And so I don't know if they're that interested in it. I think that Craig does it better than anyone else on that group, but he's still it's kind of mediocre, like from an actor perspective. In the actor world, he's still kind of in the middle. He'd have a hard time getting through casting, And so the thing is that I think that's the challenge for C-suite. But he's definitely the top of everything that what Apple's doing, and it's really fun. I have to admit, I enjoy the over the top. I loved the jump at the beginning. I thought it was so funny. It's corny and goofy, and it was fun. Like I thought it was really fun to take Deadpool and make it Apple. So I think that I'm having fun watching them. I have to admit, everything that's on stage is way too slow for me. Like, I can't watch stage.
Well, and I agree that the Google I/O event was god awful. I mean, it's certainly possible to do terrible live events as well.
No. It's not possible to do terrible live events. It's almost impossible to do great events when you do it on stage.
When Steve did it, it was great, and he did it live.
But Steve was Steve, and we can't base.
No, I understand these guys are not Steve. But I feel like it's just distancing. It becomes corporate, mechanical, and that's not. Mm-hmm. But that's me. I'm not. That's like we do these shows live. We don't edit out stuff. That's just. Yeah. It's like
I've just remembered something I said to a good friend talking about this a few days ago. That it's like there are going to be clicks, pops, and buzzes in any audio. The question is, if you remove all of them, it sounds completely artificial. So it's okay to have some problems, because that makes it feel a lot natural. And I just feel as though Apple's presenters are trained to let's get every single click, pop, and buzz.
When we started Tech TV, the standard in computer television, not that there was very much of it, was to have everything work perfectly. And if something crashed, you stopped. And I was very clear with Tech TV. No, everything's going to be live. And if it crashes, it crashes, because it misrepresents the actual experience to users. And users suddenly wonder, why was everything breaking for me? Yeah. But when they see it happen, it would happen all the time. That's, That's genuine.
Julia
It's
Child.
called authenticity, and I'm a fan of authenticity.
Messing up, flipping an omelet, and saying, "Okay, it's not always going to work great, and you're alone in the kitchen. No one sees you. You can just pick it up and fold it with your hands. It's great."
We're going to take a break. Come back with more in just a bit. Hold on a sec. Alex Lindsay, Jason Snell, Andy Anako, and yes, we'll talk about Spielberg and other stories. There's a lot to talk about. I was kind of unfortunate. There was so much Apple news today when we could easily have just spent the whole time talking about their event. But we will get to it in just a second. Our show today brought to you by Cashfly. Actually, quite literally brought to you by Cashfly. That's what we use. It's our content delivery network, and we've been using them practically since day one. The best thing about Cashfly is you don't know it. You don't know it. All you know is, well, I know whenever I download the podcast, it comes in fast. The video stream's fine. There's no buffering. You don't know it because it works. For over 20 years, Cashfly has held the track record for high-performing, ultra-reliable content delivery, serving over 5,000 companies in over 80 countries. They're truly global, and that's why we use them. Because we want to be global. We want everybody to get that great experience. We've been using Cashfly, I think, for more than 15 years now. We love their lag-free video, the loading, the hyper-fast downloads, the friction-free site interactions. Cashfly is the only CDN built for throughput. Ultra-low latency video streaming delivers video to over 1 million concurrent users with latency of less than 1 second. Wow. Lightning-fast gaming delivers downloads faster with zero lag, zero glitches, zero outages, mobile content optimization. This is great. If you've got a site that delivers images, you get automatic, simple image optimization, so your site loads fast on every screen size, every device, optimized for each size. Now, the thing we loved about Cashfly is they worked with us with flexible month-to-month billing because we didn't know when the peaks, the valleys would be. We didn't want to pay for all that throughput all of the time. They worked with us. And they'll work with you for as long as you need. And then once you know it, they'll give you discounts for fixed terms. The point is you design your own contract when you switch to Cashfly. Cashfly delivers rich media content up to 158% faster than other major CDNs. You can this is something we've been doing for some time. It really works. Shield your site content in their cloud, which means you get a 100% cache hit ratio. And man, they treat you like kings. Or queens. With a Cashfly Elite Managed Package VIP treatment, you get a dedicated account manager who's going to be with you from the beginning to the end, ensuring a smooth implementation and reliable 24/7 support when you need it. Reliable, fast. That's Cashfly. You've heard me say it for so many years. Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by Cashfly at cachefly.com/twit. Learn how you can get your first month free. Cashfly.com/twit. We thank them. In this case, not just for advertising on the show, but for providing all that great bandwidth for all these years. We couldn't do it without you, Cashfly. Okay, it's just a silly story, but I love it. Steven Spielberg is presenting. This happened on Saturday. He is at the Tribeca Film Festival, celebrating the 50th anniversary of a movie I loved, but Spielberg joked, many of you are going to see this you'll be the first audience to see this in 50 years. Sugarland Express. We made it before Jaws. Goldie Hawn was in it. Has anybody seen it? It's a wonderful movie. It's a really sweet movie. Anyway, he's there. He's talking about it. His Apple Watch interrupts him with a message saying, "It looks like you've taken a hard fall." Spielberg said, "I'm not going to press the SOS button before throwing it on the ground. I'll pick it up later." But he had to retrieve it a few minutes later because it started issuing a distress signal. So I've had that happen to me. Sometimes when I'm talking, I'll slap the table and the watch says, "Hey, are you all right?" Now, I've yet to have it call 911, but if you ignore that for a while, it will, right? So
yeah,
I've had it when I'm watching Steeler games. Tell me, you're seated, but your heart rate is very high.
yeah.
How are you doing?
Yeah.
So, I wonder if that's going to rate like a reenactment when they release the next watch.
Wouldn't that be great?
A little video like
Put that
I was giving a presentation as one of the most honored and respected filmmakers in front of 1,000 people when my Apple Watch went off for no damn reason. I had to stop what I was doing. I got so frustrated that I threw it.
I am very proud of Lena Khan and the Federal Trade Commission, despite a lot of negative publicity about her and her choices in the Wall Street Journal and from maybe some of our panelists. They have been very aggressive. Now they are suing Adobe, the FTC and the DOJ suing Adobe for deceiving subscriptions that are too hard to cancel, hiding termination fees, making cancellation difficult. Right on. Go get them. The complaint filed yesterday says Adobe has harmed users by enrolling them in its default most lucrative subscription plan without clearly disclosing important plan terms. I have to say,
I think that
I don't understand what they're talking about, but okay.
I think the issue is that, and this is not just Adobe, this is many other companies will by default, they'll tell you it's this much on a yearly subscription. And so it's like the fine print underneath it's $30 a month. It says on a yearly subscription. So you sign up for that. And if you do a lot of subscriptions, you get pretty sensitive to that. And you go, oh, no, I only want monthly, or, oh, I'm going to use this all the time.
It's dark patterns.
It is. And so I think that what they're talking about is that Adobe's going to, by default, put you in the yearly, which means you're going to not be, you're paying per year. Like you're
charged for $100 instead of $30.
But you're saving $10 a month by doing it that way, but you're stuck with it for the year. And I think that the Adobe subscriptions are pretty frustrating. The hard part is that there's nobody, and this is where Adobe has, it's not a monopoly, but it's near monopolistic impact, which is that I have been trying to not use Photoshop for years. Since the subscription started, I've been like, oh, I got to find a Photoshop, for many day-to-day operations, I think someone could use Pixelmator or Affinity Photo or many of the other ones. On day-to-day, I need to do a couple things with my images. The problem is that if you're a high-end professional, there are definitely things that you still need to go back to the Adobe products to do. And the new thing now is, the generative fill is so transformative in Photoshop that someone asked, like, could you ever really Photoshop? I'm like, no. And they're like, why? And generative fill. Like, I use that every single day. Like, it's just like, oh, I need to make this image a little wider. I need to do this over here. I need to take the text out of here. I need to take this book out of here. I need to do these. Like, as someone who used to spend hours in clone tool world, the ability to just rebuild the image and fix an image is so profound that I couldn't. That's the most profound feature that I've had. And so the problem we get into is that, again, if you're not that, then you get into it and you say, oh, I don't want to use this anymore. And I hate the way that Adobe has their subscription set up of, like, they want to package all these apps we don't care about so that we can have After Effects. Like, we want After Effects. I just want to pay $20 a month for After Effects, but you can't do that. They want to have you pay $50 a month so they can package all this other apps in that you're never going to use. And that's that. I will admit I'm never sure whether the government should start micromanaging this, but as an Adobe subscriber, I find it pretty frustrating.
They also FTC went after Amazon last year for this, pretty much the same thing, saying Amazon knowingly complicated the ability of customers of its Prime service to cancel their subscriptions. Yeah. It is a universal problem. It's people.
Dark pattern is one of the things that the regulators are targeting really, really hard, because it is a problem. I did an audit of all my subscription services, and the number of times where there was one very, very popular news site where it was, oh, so wow, why am I being billed for this? It was like a news conglomerate, and I'm like, well, I need to know what website or what service this actually is. And I literally spent 45 minutes going through all of these pages trying to figure out what it was, and it couldn't. Then, well, maybe I'll contact customer service, and there's no place to talk to somebody. I can't remember exactly how I found some sort of a feedback form. It might have been on some deeply nested corporate page. And of course, as soon as I said, hey, here's the ID that I used to that was charged to, can you tell me what it is? And within that, it was deleted within 2 hours. But you really have to be very, very determined to get that $6.95 back a month in order to get these things gone. And it might be the point at which regulation is required, because so long as there's no penalty for doing that, except for keeping people on the hook for months and months and months, they're never going to do it.
Well, and one of this is one of the things, lock-ins that I have with Apple, with iOS specifically, not so much with Apple TV, because Apple TV lets you do outside subscriptions. But in iOS, I sign up for something and I wait a day usually, and then I just end the subscription because it's easy. And it is a huge reason that I get so particular about apps going outside of the app stores, because what I love and what a lot of app developers want to get around is that I can just say, okay, end that. And then what happens is that it puts it on an expiration. If I get to the end of it, I get a little alert that says it's going to go away. If I haven't been using it, I just let it die. And the thing is it's so easy. And I have saved, when people say, oh, Apple's cost more money, I have saved thousands of dollars that just with that one feature of being able to turn subscriptions off ahead of time, immediately, without any friction. I've definitely saved thousands of dollars as an Apple user, just not being able to turn subscriptions off easily, because you don't forget about them. There's one place to find them. It's easy to turn them off. And that has been, it's one of the big reasons that I get locked in and I don't want to buy things outside of iOS.
Apple is I had misgivings when they announced they were going to do buy now, pay later. It didn't last very long. They're canceling it. This has always been a problem because of people buying more than they can afford. And I was surprised that Apple wanted to get in that business. Now they're getting out of it. They launched it last year. Existing users with Open Apple Pay Later loans will be able to manage them via the Wallet app. They're going to focus on other features, including the ability to access installment loan offerings from companies like Affirm or credit cards. They just they don't want to be in this business. They
floated the loans. They actually created their own financial services company in order to do that. And and that was just a little over a year ago. It was like last March. And so they are clearly out of that now. Although again, they're using partners that'll still be able to do this buy now pay later thing that is apparently popular, but they don't need to be the ones doing those high interest loans. They can let other people deal with it instead. And I think this is one of those cases. I was thinking about this today. I think this is a great example of how occasionally Apple as a giant corporation thinks they can do anything, and they discovered that there are certain areas where their reach exceeds their grasp, and financial services is one of them. Keep in mind also, the Apple Card has almost been out for 5 years. It's US only, and Goldman's trying to get out of it, right? Yeah. Apple Cash is US only. Apple Pay is out there, so there's the one success, but all of the other financial items that they've been trying to do, where Mark Gurman reported a couple of years ago, they had big plans for financial services, and this was an area they're going to go. I think what they've discovered is that Apple Pay aside, the financial services industry and the regulation that's connected to it, it's easier to have all the money than to be the bank, is what they've learned, because they've got all the money, but they are not a bank. They're just not. And
the pay on terms service, it was one of a bunch of different things that Apple does that made me kind of wonder, how much money do they think is in this for them to get themselves associated with something that is a little, I don't even want to say shifty, but it's shifty adjacent, let's say. It could really backfire on them very, very badly, or puts their name with a business that is not really very well thought of. Again, what is it about this part of the business that is so alluring that it's worth that kind of risk? So that's it. The fact that they're dropping it after a year while still allowing the infrastructure to allow an outside company to do that allows them to keep their hands clean, and that makes a lot more sense.
Let's see. I really liked your piece. I thought it was very thoughtful, Jason, in 6 Colors, about Apple Intelligence and the pros and cons. And you pointed out one thing which I thought was very interesting, which is that there are only a couple of areas where Apple is stretching to do something that is well out of their wheelhouse. Features Apple would never have done. You divide the AI into 3 categories. Features Apple would have done anyway. Features Apple would have done eventually. But there are a couple of things you talk about that Apple probably wouldn't have done. The obvious one is the ChatGPT chatbot. But the other one you say is image playgrounds. And this is basically Mid-Journey or Stable Diffusion in an app for iOS, or rather all of Apple, right? Mac OS as well.
It felt a little bit like a reach to me, that there was something like the Genmoji thing where they're generating emoji based on a really limited emoji set.
Yeah, big deal.
Actually sounds like them.
Right.
But the image playground surprised me because it is super constrained, right? It is very limited. They've put some UI on it that I think is really interesting, right? Because I think fundamentally, if you think the future of image generation is trying to figure out exactly the right words, I know Alex is really good at this now, but like the exact right words to put into a command line prompt to get the image you want, like we already had in 1984 called the graphic interface is here, right? We want something that is not a command line. And so they've tried to build this like token interface where even if you type in something, it turns it into tokens and they give you a bunch of selections, obviously tuned to what they built the model on and the styles that they built into the model. All of that is very Apple-like, but I just kept thinking, making AI art, even if it is just clip art for you to stick in a iMessage or on your keynote slide or whatever, that I think the generative stuff Apple is really more wary of. And that one for me also, I don't particularly like AI art. And when I saw their AI art examples, which keep in mind marketing, those are the best ones they could generate. I was like, I wasn't very enthusiastic about it, but I feel like they had to do it. Just like the GPT integration. It's like they had to do it because they need to say, hey, we're here, we're with it, we're paying attention. And so they did it and they put their own spin on it. I'm not convinced that if they were not under enormous pressure, if Image Playgrounds would have been in that keynote, right? I'm not sure they would have gone down that path. It feels like it's a little bit far for them, but you know what? They had goals to really convince people that they were paying attention to AI. It seems to have worked. And so Image Playgrounds.
It feels like it's like the Image Playground feels like, as someone who spends a lot of time Midjourney, it feels like someone described to you what Midjourney does, and then you wrote something that was kind of like it, but you had a whole bunch of better ideas of how to make it more contained or whatever, but you never actually used Midjourney, so you didn't actually know what that was. So you didn't understand like what you wanted. It's just dorky. Like the images that come out of it are like Midjourney 1.0.
I think intentionally dorky, honestly.
Yeah,
it reminded me of, remember when they said like you can send your heartbeat with the Apple Watch? There is a strain inside Apple that's like, come on, it's fun and zany. We're doing fun, zany things with our friends on our phones. And that's what it feels like.
It's just like when I use it, I use Midjourney a lot for my presentations. And so you think about these things going, hey, I really want it to be funny, to have some kind of funny little thing that I want to say or something like that. But the most common thing that I do is over a plain white background, with the padding of 20%, full body or not body or whatever it is. And now I get these little objects and I get, a character and I say in the style of Pixar over a white background or whatever. And I get a goofy character that I can very quickly remove the background, stick it in my keynote, and I'm off to the races. And it's funny and people get a little laugh out of it. It cools things down a little bit. I look at the Apple ones. I'm like, I would never use those, like, because they got the little weird square around them. That's like totally like, I will only give you training wheels. And so I felt like it was a real, for people who've never used any image generation, it'll be like, oh, that's kind of cool. But for anybody that's ever done it, they're going to be like, oh, this is dorky. Yeah.
I think we talked about last week about how I think part of it is about they want to make sure they don't get caught up in any deep fake scandal. So they're more happy doing cartoony sort of stuff that's easily identifiable, always has a box around it. I think that they are very, very aware that they are not the only providers of generative AI in the world, and that if people do want something with a whole much more muscle and customization behind it, they're going to go outside to people companies have been doing this for years and years and years. I was kind of surprised. So they released more information about their foundation model. There is a page on Apple support about the model training, and they mentioned how they trained the image model. About the Apple bot, which is an Apple spider they have going out on the web. So if I could have guessed a month ago, I would have said that they're going to basically follow some of what Adobe had done by saying, we've got an image generator, but we have licensed all the content from it, so that our hands are clean, but also so that you can use this stuff and not worry about being someone coming after you a couple of years later saying that the figure that's on your packaging actually originated from someplace else. But it does say that Apple uses Applebot, a web crawler, to crawl information that's publicly available on the internet. Apple uses information that is licensed from third parties, publicly available on the internet, and created synthetically. So from this, it seems as though at least part of the image generation of the image playground model is generated with just again, as usual, stuff that just people put up on the internet. There is a form, of course, you can click to fill out to say, please don't use my information that way. And they do, of course, exclude like your personal private information. So it's not as though your Apple photos are going into it. It does say specifically publicly available stuff. So things that a bot or a spider on the web could have found. But I don't necessarily think this is bad or wrong, but it surprises me because, again, given how simple this image generator is, it doesn't seem like something they absolutely had to do. Although, and I also need to say, I'm making an assumption that Image Playground, the model that they're using, was fed partially with publicly accessible information. It's possible that this thing that they have put out already, the thing they intend to put out in the next version of the OS, has actually only been trained with stuff that they've licensed, but it's right there in the support document. And I think it's something I'm going to want to know more about as time goes by.
Yeah, I mean, Apple could afford to just buy Getty Images.
Yeah,
I'm just going to buy. We're going to buy all of these, and then just make them all, and then just train on them. Like it is. I mean, Getty Images market cap today is 1.47 billion. That would be, kind of a little bit of a rounding error for Apple to just buy them, and then have that entire library. And so I think that you're right that I don't see any reason. I think that doing it on publicly available documents as opposed to all documents that we paid for a company like Apple feels like an unforced error. Like you could totally train, especially when you're doing, I have a limited number of things I can make. It's not an open field. I could totally train, like I could buy, 1 million pictures of horses. And if you ask for a horse, you're going to get one in all the different ways that it could possibly, and I think that those are, or office items or whatever the things that they think people are going to be excited about. I think that Apple could do that without having to go out into the public.
Yeah, that's why I categorize this entire thing as being a force, that this feels like they're pushing it too far. And Alex, to your point too, like I think they don't want to do what Midjourney does, or at least not yet. And they wanted to have it be like a training wheels feature. I think the only place, I'm not sure their heart was in it. I think the only place their heart was actually in it was building UI around it. And I think that's instructive, right? Because I really do believe it's better if you create an AI generator, AI for any kind of generative content with a UI that is helpful instead of having to do the incantation on in a text field. I think that's great.
I feel like it could have a certain style. Like I'm not complaining about the style. It's the square around it and the fact that it feels like the original Apple logo. It feels like everything is like, we looked at the original Apple logo back in the 70s and we want everything to look like that, and that's the style that you're getting for all of those things. And I just feel like it's a really tired style, and I do think that if we only gave you 4 styles or 5 styles, and they don't have to be in the style of Pixar and the style of HR Geeker and the style of Ivan Durrell. It could be whatever you want to be those, they could decide their 4 styles, and they take that little frame around them, around it, and not make it look so old and tired. I think it would go along. I think people would actually use it, and I do think that there's an opportunity when you look at USDZ, Apple could get ahead of things they're already starting to experiment with this in Blender, where you're using generative AI to generate 3D models. Give me a 3D phone.
This comes from corporate fear, and they're right.
Yes.
Of hallucinations and of the kind of problems Google got into with its woke image generation in Gemini. They don't want the black marks on their escutcheon, but this is a problem. Because in order to do this is concomitant with AI. This is what AI is. It's a hallucination machine. And so Apple's got a real conundrum, which is, how do we do this, look like we're hip and with it, without risking the problems that Google and Microsoft have had with their
So I have a theory.
Yeah, what's your theory?
I have a theory, which is, okay, so one, you build a bunch of things that are like baby features with guardrails, which is what Image Playgrounds is. And it gives you that level of Apple control of like, look, we know what this is going to be, and we know it's not going to satisfy Alex, and we don't even want it to. We just want it to be for people who are like, oh, this is fun. I made a thing. Great. Yeah. And Alex is going to do it. And
somebody in the Discord says it's photo booth.
Yeah. So
for AI.
And we're going to do LLMs, and it's all going to be arm's length warning labels over there. It's not us. It's ChatGPT. If it says something horrible, it's ChatGPT. It's not us. We put a warning label on it that says that this may be wrong and causes cancer and whatever. And like, it's over there. but what's the long game here? Well, they're probably working on upgrading their model. All of these other tech companies are working on it. I feel like one of two things is going to happen. Either the models and the whole industry is going to figure out ways to reduce the hallucination problem, either with guardrails or with like cross-checking or something like that. And at which point Apple can be like, great, there's no problem with it. Or the hallucination problem is going to be unsolvable, and we're going to realize that this stuff is not going to be suitable for a lot of those tasks, in which case Apple will say, great, anything that might be hallucinated, we're not going to do. We're just going to so I think they're hedging. I think they're doing what they can right now and thinking like, if this gets solved in the future, we'll deal with it then. But for the present, we can say, look, we got that stuff. And be kind of like on the edge without having to own it. I think it's absolutely what's going on.
Well, I think you're right. And we're going to take a break on that. We still have quite a bit of show to go. You're watching MacBreak Weekly with Jason Snell, Andy Anako, our good friend Alex Lindsay. And, one of the reasons this show exists is because of you. You Club Twit members have kept Twit alive for the last 2 years while advertising dwindled, costs went up, revenue went down. If it weren't for Club Twit, I don't know if we'd have the lights on today. But we still need more members because, frankly, the decline continues. So many podcast networks and podcasts have gone off the air, some great ones like Rocket, because the ad support just isn't there. Every time I talk to a podcaster, Brian McCullough, I talked to him the other day. He said, yeah, it's tough out there. You see WNYC struggling, WGBH struggling. And I just saw a story that iHeart is suffering and may have to go chapter 22. They went chapter 11 2 years ago, but ad revenue has declined for them as well. There is one hope that I have for going forward, and that's we have a great community here. I think we have a large number of people. We average about 75,000 unique listeners every month. Who did I say 75? 750. Sorry. Who 750? Almost 1 million people. Let's put it that way. Every month listen to our shows. They love the shows we do, and I really think that our community is what makes us different from so many of these other places. But the only way that can work is if the community chips in. I would love it if everybody who loves our shows joins the club. It's only $7 a month. I know many of you won't or can't or just don't want another subscription. But if you can see your way clear to going to twit.tv/clubtwit, we've put together something I think has good benefits. It's ad-free versions of all the shows, video on shows that we only do in audio, special programming that is inside the club. Of course, the great Club Twit Discord, a great place to hang. But really, it's not for those reasons. It's because you want to support what we're doing and you want it to continue. And frankly, it's not going to be ad supported in the years to come. It just can't. It's got to be you supported. So if you would, twit.tv/clubtwit, if you like what we do and you want us to keep doing it, that's how you cast the vote. $7 a month, twit.tv/clubtwit. And my deepest thanks to all the people who've done that up to now. It's really a remarkable showing. It's 12,000 members now, 12,000 paying members. But that's still not even 2% of the total. So I think there's a little room for growth. It's an experiment. Can this kind of programming succeed with only the support of its listeners? Twit.tv/clubtwit. Thank you. Sorry to have to interrupt with that, but you need to know. You deserve to know. I'm going to give a little plug, even though none of you probably appreciate this. This was a blog post from Charles Choi, an accidental login feature of the Apple ecosystem. I'm sure you were puzzled by why I put this in. Apple,
yeah.
Apple, in all of its native apps like Notes and on the command line, support Emacs key bindings. Now, I know that for most of you, that's dumb. But believe me, it is lock-in for me. Because when I'm on Windows and I press Control-A and it doesn't do what I think it's going to do, I don't know what to do. Apple has strong support, probably because it goes back to Next. That's Charles' theory, is that It started with NextOS in 1988. They used Emacs, which is, by the way, for those who don't know what that is, the original text editor written by Richard Stallman at MIT, one of the original hackers. It's written in Lisp, and it's amazing work of art. And he says whenever they typed in the text widgets of the Next Step UI, they naturally wanted Emacs bindings. It was unlikely this was ever an executive level requirement. The developers wanted it, so they made it happen. But what's amazing is here we are 50 years later, and they're still doing it. Thank you. And it's in Swift. The text system in the Swift UI framework uses Emacs key bindings. So I just wanted to thank Charles Choi for pointing that out. I've known it because I always use it. And I'm always grateful when I'm sitting in terminal. I hit Command A and it goes to the beginning of the line, or Command E and goes to the end of the line. But it even supports the very unusual cut, copy, and paste things. Control Y to yank text that you killed with Control K, things like that. So thank you, Apple. That's just for me. No, I get it. I love features like that are everywhere, that somewhere within the giant org chart of what's in this piece of software, what's in this operating system, it never made it because it was just something where some developer working in-house was sick and tired of doing the same stupid thing. I'm going to put in this feature just for me. I'm not going to log it. I'm not going to do anything about it. And it's still there 12 years later. And now oftentimes it's like, how can we remove this? We can't. It's too deeply embedded into the framework of the entire system. We cannot take this out anymore. So okay. It must stay. I love it when things like that happen. And I fancy that there's somebody at Apple, the Apple campus, who's still using Emacs somewhere. I am. Yes. In fact, really, if I ever even considered going to Windows, I wouldn't, because Emacs doesn't run well there. Apple is a Unix operating system. It runs beautifully there. I live in it. All the time. What was I was going to ask about? You know, I've forgotten. Oh, the rumor. See, I'm not crazy about rumors, but you know, the rumor is we had somebody call the Ask the Tech guys asking about. Well, should I get an Apple Watch? And I said, you know, as far as I can tell, there's not going to be a big update with the Ultra anyway. If you're interested in that, there is going to be a Series 10, and Ming-chi Kuo has some interesting rumors that it will come in larger screen sizes. I mean, much larger, 45 and 49 millimeters, thinner cases. The Ultra will not change much, he says.
In the world of, when we expect it to come out in the fall, right? I mean, it usually is released in September.
The fall. Yeah.
I always feel like once you get within 3 months of when you expect something to come out, you should just wait. Like, you know, like when I was talking to someone, do you have an Apple? We were trying to test something. I said, do you have a 15? And they said, no, should I get one? I said, no. Like just wait. Like, you know, don't buy one now. Like, wait, you know, that's going to be the same price for all the new features.
Well, and all this Apple intelligence kind of gives credence to that, because you don't want an old phone at this point, right? You really want to make sure you have the latest phone.
And in general, I mean, unless you broke your phone and you need one now, you can wait 3 more months and just wait it out and get the new one in September or October or whenever it ships. It doesn't make any sense to buy it faster than that, in my opinion.
And again, the wall is coming down between an AI phone and a not AI phone, an AI laptop and a not AI laptop. So you definitely want to wait as long as you can to make sure you get one that is going to have 5 years of life in it, as opposed to the one that's going to be the Fisher-Price edition for 3 years and then that's it.
Yeah. And if you are you love the Apple chess game built into Mac OS, I'm a serious chess player, and I even forget that it's there. I've never used it. There's so many better chess programs, but it's still there, and it's coming to Sequoia. There's some good news and there's some bad news. The grass type board is gone. They only have now only 3. There's wood, metal, and marble. But there's a better gradient, and the board is a little bit. This is the old one on the left, the new one on the right, according to.
Realize there's probably somebody there. There's probably somebody at Apple that just works on this one.
It's somebody's job.
Like, this is their job.
Right?
What do you do? Oh, I did the chessboard. I did it.
But they don't do their job well, because because there are great.
They're not given the resources needed to bring this app to its destiny.
I think there's a lot of indecision here. There's a lot of arguments, and it's just hard to move forward. But they nug through it. They have to do updates. Remember, they have to do updates every single time they get it for every OS. They have to update that chessboard. I think it is probably I don't know if it's a full-time position, but it's probably at least a quarter.
It's another job that dates back to Next Step because it came with the Next Step. The last time they updated the game was in 2012, so it's been a while. So maybe that guy was on sabbatical. I don't know.
But no, the last time they changed the features, it was 2012, not the last time they updated. Remember, you got to build you got to support all the new OS stuff, so it's got to be updated every time. So it's all work.
All I'll say is there are great open source chess engines now that can beat the best players in the world, and you could put that into Apple Chess, and maybe somebody would actually.
You want something that beats the? I am definitely.
It's
not
easy to beat.
the best.
You can beat it.
That's a feature.
I played chess on my Vision Pro on a plane, and that was a solid 2 hours of remembering how to.
Is it the same chess, or is it a special version for the Vision Pro?
3D chess? Like I don't know. I've never played the one on macOS, to be honest.
It's 3D as well.
I have to admit that it was like, I don't feel like watching a movie. What else is here? And I opened up the chessboard, and it actually turned out to be really fun. I'm sitting there. The person sitting next to me is like, "What are you doing?" Like after when we were walking out, he was like, "What were you doing?" Because you're going like this the whole time, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I was like, "Oh, I was playing chess." He's like, "It all made sense."
As bad as rumors, gossip, but sometimes you just gotta share the gossip. According to Fortune, Howard Schultz, the former Starbucks CEO, says Steve Jobs screamed in his face, telling him to fire the entire Starbucks leadership team. And Schultz says he was right.
I think that's the problem that a lot of people have is that they're like, Steve Jobs screamed about this, and then it comes back, and they're like, man, he might have been, he had some points.
He might have been
said them loudly.
This was on the Acquired podcast that came out last week. Schultz told the story of the first time he met Steve Jobs. There was a future meeting scheduled for Starbucks and Apple around mobile order and pay and other things. You remember famously with the iPhone, one of the very first things Steve Jobs did was order coffee for everybody, right? He called the Starbucks down at the Yerba Buena Center. I met Steve on a phone call, had never met him, was talking to him on the phone. I'm telling him what's going on. Jobs invited Schultz, whose business was in, of course, Washington State, to Cupertino to discuss the matter in person. They had a famous courtyard, and Jobs would always go for a walk with these guys. Remember, he famously convinced Don Scully to join Apple by going on a walk with the then CEO of Pepsi. Apparently, Tim Cook does the same thing around Apple Park. Jobs had a whole thing about walking, Schultz says. He would go out, would walk around the building. So I went down there. Basically, we took a walk. I told him all my problems at Starbucks. Everything was going on. He stopped me and said, "This is what you need to do. You go back to Seattle. You fire everyone in your leadership team." I thought he was joking. Schultz said he pushed back. I said, "What are you talking about? Fire everybody?" He said, "I told you, effing fire all those people." He was like screaming at me in my face, "Fire all those people. That's what I would do." I said, "Steve, I can't fire all these people. Who's going to do the work?" He said, "I promise you, in 6 months, maybe 9, they'll all be gone." He was right. Schultz says, except for one, the general counsel, they were all gone. I've talked to him since then. We were on stage together at an event. I told him they're all gone. He said, "Well, you're 6 months, 9 months late, but think about all the things you could have done if you just listened to me."
Yeah, but I will say, firing everybody at the same time or slowly getting rid of them over 9 months is very different. Two very different worlds.
Yeah.
You do want to move at a pace where you don't burn out the first new hires because the sludging through the mud is too hard. But replacing everybody at one time would have been a thing.
You don't want to be associated
Elon
as
Musk,
like
right?
It's very Caligula. It's very it's not,
My horse is now in charge. Goodbye.
All the senators with the letter E in their name step forward. Centurions, loose your arrows. You displease me. Goodbye.
Apple will not notarize emulators in the EU. This is your story in 6 colors. I don't know. Yeah. What's the story there, Jason?
So the story here is funny. It's just a really quick link post. I missed this. It happened the weekend before WWDC. And I heard about it on the Accidental Tech podcast, actually. They talked about it. So hat tip to them. And my link post from this morning is on Tech Meme now. So go figure.
Wow.
It happens when you least expect it. I work on a story for days and nothing, but a link post that I did in 5 minutes, Tech Meme. Great. Anyway, here's the story. They're makers of emulators have gotten rejections from Apple about their emulators. Not too surprising. I think this answers the question of would a PC emulator, would a computer emulator be approved if it was even primarily meant to play games, because it's not a console, which is what Apple has said. And the answer seems to be no. The answer seems to be that they will be rejected. So the UTM emulator and the IDOS emulator were both rejected. But by far more troubling is the fact that they were rejected from notarization for being used in the EU marketplace, which is deeply troubling.
It's exactly what they're not supposed to do, right?
Exactly. It suggests that Apple's policies are now extending to allowing apps not to be notarized. They're using the notarization step, which is supposed to be a security step, to refuse apps into alternative marketplaces in the EU. Now, I'm sure that they've got some explanation for why, but when they told these developers, they basically said, well, it's against our rules about running code inside apps, which, if that's the case, is completely contrary to the DMA, because Apple doesn't get to arbitrarily list things like that and say, we've just decided to not make it available in third-party marketplaces. The notarization step is supposed to be very limited into what they reject or accept. So I guess it's in the EU's court now, or the European Commission's court, about how they judge this. This will probably get resolved with somebody calling Apple and saying, you can't do this. Because honestly, if Apple can just say, no, we decided emulators are bad, and inconsistently, right? Because there are other emulators that are not bad, that use the same rule, that violate the same rule, but are allowed, like Delta, because that also is running arbitrary code, then what are we even doing here? So I guess I would put this on the watch list of, it's the thing that we were waiting to see if it would happen, which is, would Apple use notarization to do a de facto rejection of apps even outside the App Store? And the answer seems to be yes. We'll see. They haven't explained themselves to anybody, but we will see what they say. But that is, I find that troubling. And then also, I'll throw in here, Riley Testit, who does AltStore, has said that many of the apps that they've tried to get into their store in the European Union are being held up in app review for notarization. And in fact, the UTM emulator people said that Apple held their notarization request for 2 months before finally rejecting it. So they're dragging their feet, they're delaying, and then they're making rejections that on the face don't really make sense, which is what everybody was worried about.
It's a backdoor rejection. It's a way to reject without rejecting.
Exactly. So the only response is going to be, will the regulators say to Apple, you've got to allow this? We've seen that happen in the last few months, where Apple has come out with a declaration, and then like a week later, they've been like, oh, not that, right? We didn't mean that, and then allow it. So we'll see what happens here. Something to keep an eye on. But this is one of those cases where there's like a fairly arbitrary Apple rule that they enforce in their store that they're not supposed to enforce more broadly, but they seem to be using the notarization as a method of rejecting apps outside of its purview.
Well, and don't downgrade yourself, Jason, because sure, this story broke a while ago, but by your bringing it to everyone's attention, now you have raised, because it's you've raised the attention, and now everybody's going, wait a minute, what?
It goes from ATP to me to Tech Meme. Yeah, that's how it happens.
There you go. With a little,
I mean, really, I just posted it right before the show, so I don't even know. I would hope that somebody at Apple will at some point respond to this. They probably won't respond unless they've got something to say about it. My guess is that they're going to say, oh, no, this isn't about it being an emulator. This is about a very specific security concern we have. However, that goes directly against the experience of the two emulator designers, developers. So I'm really skeptical of this. This sounds, I mean, maybe it's also a structural thing, but the fact that it took 2 months suggests that Apple like had conversations about whether they were going to do this or not, and then finally decided to do it. So I'm, we'll see. All the facts are not out yet, but I don't like the smell of this. This stinks to me.
By the way, you could have called it Apple Intelligence, or you could have called it Andy Ihnatko. because he is also AI. I realize I'm looking at our show and there's a bunch of AI stories in here. And I thought, well, I'm not going to do AIs. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah. I wanted to make a joke on the new tech blog that I'm doing, that I'm launching soon about, so I was underneath the mask said like all content generated 100% by AI. Then I thought that I don't want that to be inside any algorithm that, oh, well, then let's downgrade the hell out of this.
Yeah. All right. I will save your AI generated stories for later because we're running low on time. Maybe next week we can talk about. I think I saw this Micro Mac. I thought it was very interesting. We'll talk about the $7 Macintosh. I paid $2,500 for my 128K Mac. Now I can get it for $7. That tells you something, doesn't it? In a nutshell, right? Tells you something. Are you using Micro Mac, John? No, he's using a floppy disk emulator for his 128K that the floppy had died, but he was able to use a floppy emulator. All right, we're going to take a little break. When we come back, it's time for your picks of the week. So, boys, saddle up and prepare. You're watching MacBreak Weekly with Jason Snell, Andy Ihnatko, Alex Lindsay. We always end with Alex's pick of the week because it's the most expensive, but let's start with it today. Alex Lindsay, your pick of the week.
Yeah, so I hate a lot of us use ATEMs. These are Blackmagic ATEMs and Blackmagic switchers, and there is one tool that makes them completely a different piece of hardware.
This I want to know about because I'm going to be switching to ATEMs pretty soon.
I recommend thinking about this. This is MixEffect Pro, and what MixEffect Pro does is, and it's new, it now has a way that you can actually go from your switcher into your iPad, so you can actually see your multi-view in your iPad while you're working. But the main thing about this is whether it's on your phone or whether it's on your iPad, what it does is it allows you to it gives you the opportunity to run your switcher, and it is the switcher. Like it does all the controls that your switcher does. And so for instance, I can do things with it, and this is why it's important. As super sources, it does a bunch of other things that are really good. But one of the big things is a lot of us want to use super sources. These are 2-ups or 4-ups or other things like that. We want to build a show around, and we want to do it with our hardware switcher. And doing that, let alone animating between the different windows, is very difficult. So if I click on this right now, you'll see me, I think, I got to switch to super source. So you'll see this kind of swing into 2. I can go to, let's see, I want to go to this, or I want to go to a 2-up here like this. I want to go to 4 and have these pop up. And this on a software switcher is relatively easy. On an ATEM is hard. ATEMs are very stable. They do a lot of things that are really great. They give you a lot of I/O, but doing super sources can be a little bit difficult. And so this allows you to do that much easier. And I'll see if I can pop this up real quick here in a second. Let's see if I can show you the interface of what I'm hitting here. And if I so this is, let's see here. Sorry, there we go. This is what it looks like.
A little telestrator dot right there on the screen below your microphone. It's been bugging people all through the show. I finally figured out what it was.
There it is. Telestrator dot. Telestrator dot. There we go. I got a little something on me. I got a little telestrator on me. So anyway, but if I go to this is what the interface looks like. So what I was doing here and here, I'm hitting these, and it's simply as I click through them, and I can sit, and so I have done pretty big events just with this interface. Of course, you have control over your HyperDecks. I don't have any hooked up right now. You have super sources. You can just look at a switcher, and it's incredible. And this goes a little bit further. Here's all the different out. And these are my outputs if I want to do a stream. So all the controls that I would expect to have inside of my switcher are all here. And so I think that it for me, when someone gets it, they said, "Oh, I'm getting an ATEM." I'm like, okay, you got to buy this piece of software. like it just changes. It literally quadruples the value of your switcher the moment the moment you download it onto your iPad. So if you have an iPad and you're using a Blackmagic switcher, this is a must-have app. I mean, almost all of us that do any production on it have it because it's so much faster. Building these multi-window super sources is really painful on a Blackmagic switcher. Everything else about it is very good. Like there's a lot of things we really like about it. We like that it's hardware. We like that it's stable. We like that it does all those things. But this fixes the one thing that's there. And you can't get this on any other app or all the tools on it, because what Adam did to do this is he literally watched the communication of the app and the switcher to figure out what was actually being commanded.
Oh, so he had to reverse engineer the signals. Wow. He
reverse engineered this all.
Wow.
Or a lot of it. And so a lot of the tools, you really have every tool that you would need inside of a switcher, inside of the ATEM switcher there. And then again, set it up. And so he just updated it. Again, I realized I'm not set up to, I thought I was going to show the new feature, but I'm not really set up for that. But what the new feature is that he released is the ability, if you've got a little HDMI, if you want to go out from the USB-C from your ATEM Extreme or whatever, straight into your iPad, you can actually see your multi-view in the iPad view while you're doing the edit. And so it's cool. So it's a great app. And it's about $50. And for, given what it does for something that we might spend a lot more on, it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. Amazing. Mac, iPhone, and iPad. So you can have it on whatever size screen suits. But it takes one thing that's funny about Adam is he loves shortcuts. So by the way, it has a very extensive shortcut library. That's
so you
nice.
So you have a very extensive shortcut library. It supports OSC, which is Open Sound Control, which means that the way we use it for office hours is this is our ATEM whisperer. And so basically it talks to the ATEM. We, through OSC, tell Mix Effect Pro what we want the ATEM to do, and it tells the ATEM to do it. So we're using it as a converter for it. But there's a very extensive shortcut library that's also built into this. And so you can do many, many, many things with shortcuts.
Nice job, Adam Tao. Mix Effect Pro, he calls it the paid upfront version.
Yeah.
I like that. You pay once and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Alex Lindsay. Good pick. By the way, thanks to John Ashley, who spotted that. The green, actually, we all spotted the green dot, but he's the one who says, I bet it's the telestrator.
It's the telestrator.
John knew. John was right. Now, is there a green dot on my head? Wait a minute. Andy and Akko, pick of the week.
Back in my home office, what I really, really love is having two screens, one on top of the other. And after a long time of using my Mac this way, I'm kind of like my brain, my creative brain is programmed that the lower screen is whatever it is I'm writing or creating or editing. The screen above is reference stuff or like or Slack or other stuff. And so now that we're in pleasant weather in which my lack of air conditioning at home becomes an issue and I'm doing more time at the library, I was missing that a lot because I don't have that available. Although I do have my iPad Pro and I use that as a second screen. That's great. I accidentally discovered that but I already have the perfect solution to this. There's one of my iPad stands, one of my phone stands, just in my office, happens to be the exact right height to when I put it on the desktop to hold my iPad at exactly the height hovering above my MacBook screen. I actually took a picture of the setup of I think last week. If you have that picture, and it is absolutely wonderful and gracious. It's like having it's like a custom made dual screen.
It looks like it was made to do this. It's so cool.
Exactly. And this thing happens to be, I mean, that is like, oh my God, that's just so wonderful to work with. And this thing happens to be adjustable, but as it happens, like at its lowest point, it just happens to be perfect. But you might be asking like, well, gosh, that's not going to be easy to put like in a bag. Another thing that made it seem as though this was divine ordinance. This is not like pop riveted or welded. It's actually just a screw. And so really you can just simply twist it off.
Look at that. Those Odasola guys really know their business.
It's just that simple. There you go.
I'm ordering it right now, Andy.
And it will fold completely flat.
I love this.
And I just put the screw like back into the hole so it doesn't get lost. I'm looking around for like nylon bags around my house that might be perfect for like actually just holding this in one bag. So it's one entity. And oh my God, it is just, I cannot overstress at least how happy this makes me.
Now,
I'm so much more productive when I'm
$30
with it.
It's amazing. And you're doing, that's a 12 inch or an 11? That's a 12 inch.
That's the iPad Pro. Yes, 12 inch iPad Pro.
So it's like really is like you've got two screens with your MacBook and then Pro and then your 12-inch iPad. Yeah. That's brilliant. Brilliant.
Now the only caution I will say is that obviously now this holds it perfectly. It holds it at a slight angle, and there's a big like curve here, so that unless you knock it off, it's not falling off. However, if you do knock it off carelessly, it is going to fall off, and this is and it might fall off on top of your MacBook. So either A, be reasonable or responsible, or B, I'm actually looking at like putting a magnet or something here that might be able to click into it. Yeah, exactly. I can't afford to have maybe when I upgrade to like the next the M4 iPad, maybe I'll just bond 3M bond.
Make it permanent. There you go. Very cool.
So that's my pick. It's the Odosola ODOSOLA, the name you can trust tablet stand, $30 from Amazon. I already bought a second one in case this one gets broken.
Actually, the full name, because I know people will be searching for this, is Tablet Stand Height Angle Adjustable Eye Level Desktop iPad Stands Tablet Holder for Home Office. Cradle Dock for iPad Pro. 12.9 Air for Kindle e-reader Nexus iPhone 4 to 13 inches silver.
Ask for it by name.
This would actually be good for my setup at my mom's, where I want the iPhone, because I'm using the continuity cam.
Yeah.
Right above the screen, so I could do that with the iPhone.
And again, it's sure. Oh, and it is like very, very extensible. So basically, if you really do want this to be camera height, you can definitely make this camera height. It is very, very
perfect. It's beautiful. I already ordered it. It's coming. It's coming Thursday.
Lovely.
Thank you, Andy Anako. Okay, I'm down $30. Actually, $50 for the Mix Effect Pro and $30 for you. Let's see if Jason Snell can get me to spend any more money.
$300, Leo.
Oh, yes, but what does it do?
This is the Zoom H6 Essential.
Sold.
It is a compact flash audio recorder with 4 XLR cable plugs, 4 microphones, and an expansion slot.
It's a podcast studio in a box.
It comes with a stereo microphone, so you can do field recording, but also you can add a forthcoming, it's not out yet, a little add-on that adds 2 XLRs on it, so you can record 6 at once. This is an update to the old H6N, which I had, which has gotten to the point now where the plastic on it is all degraded, so it's like picking up a sticky wet candy every time you pick it up. And I wanted a new one. And the other great things about this, so USB-C, so I don't have to carry around that weird USB micro cable in order to do it. Much better interface, and I think it's got accessibility, by the way. So if it'll do audio-driven menus, if you're somebody who is not going to be able to navigate the little video menu, and 32-bit float recording, which is the most important thing, because it means that you don't have to adjust the levels literally at all. You just press record, and it won't be overmodulated. It won't be undermodulated. You will get good audio. You just adjust it after the fact to whatever level pleases you, which is so much better than the old way. So I've been using this now for a couple of months. And my old one was really a workhorse, a lot of remote podcast stuff with 4, 5, 6 people sitting around a table, set up the microphones, you use the Zoom recorder, just very handy. And then, if you are out in the field, you can either just hold a microphone or get their little stereo microphone on here to capture audio. So anybody who's capturing audio, this is essentially my field travel recorder. So I actually use this with the iPad too, because I can use a microphone that's got USB and XLR, and I can do my Zoom over the iPad and record the audio using the Zoom recorder. 2 different companies, by the way. Zoom Audio and Zoom Video Conferencing, but
not related.
Confusing. But anyway, $300, H6 Essential.
I have the Zoom Field Recorder, the F3, which is also 32-bit, works great. But adding the XY microphones just gives you a little bit more, you can do. Are they pretty good? Do they sound all right?
They sound pretty good. And then I didn't even mention, it also will work as a USB audio interface. So if you have
that's what I use my F3 for. Yes,
you can plug in an XLR microphone and plug this into your Mac or PC or whatever, and it will become a multi-track audio interface that will work with any of your recording or video conferencing apps.
That's what I use at my mom's. I'm using my Zoom F3, and nice. 32-bit's fantastic. You can also put a shotgun.
Little case.
You can put a shotgun capsule on here.
Yeah, they got a lot of other things that are coming out. Oh, and it's got a Bluetooth adapter that's optional. And if you buy that, not only will that sync time code if you're a filmmaker, but it means you can use an iPad or an iPhone app and control it all remotely and not even have to worry about using the on-screen controls.
If we were to do a podcast, for instance, like this one with a live audience, we could have the XY microphones record ambient sound on a separate track and then have your four voices. Wow. You know, it's a good time to be a podcaster, all except for the money thing. But in every...
Leo, when we started, I mean, you kind of came from the other direction from TV, and so you've got a little more complicated setup. I will tell you, as originally a hobbyist podcaster, those early days were rough.
It was
because
hard.
Everything was either really cheap and awful or incredibly expensive and made for professional musicians. It's a lot better now.
I bought a mini disc recorder so I could do my first podcast because it was the best option for recording really high quality audio that I could then edit.
I have, if we think we still have them in the back room, recorders you hung over your shoulder, the old radio style. They were designed to look like cassette decks, but they were actually recording to SSD or compact flash or something. But I had like 8 of those, and then the SM58 mics to go out in the field to record with. It's gotten a lot better, and this Zoom stuff is fantastic. This is very impressive. Very, very impressive. And I can get it by tomorrow if I order within 25 minutes.
Amazing.
The pressure.
I'm tempted to get the shotgun. I don't know why.
$300. And the accessories are not, I think most of the accessories aren't out yet, but they're coming out later this summer, Zoom says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'll be buying the XLR thing so I can do a 6-person podcast with just this little thing. And it'll do USB power, or it's also, and this is like a beautiful feature, because when you're out in the field, it's just 4 AA's and they last a long time. So you can do it that way if you need to.
Oh, look, Burke found one of my old recorders. He's going to model it for you now. If you could just figure out where the camera is. There it is.
Oh man, we had one of those. We had one of those at Macworld. That was our first podcast recorder.
Yeah.
And the best thing about it, I just mentioned 4 AA's. I think that thing took 6 AA's or maybe 8 AA's.
Or C's or something.
And they would only last an hour.
Yeah.
It would only last an hour. You would burn those batteries off.
Marantz. With a name like Marantz, the quality goes in.
Again, built for radio journalists, essentially.
That's what this was. In fact, in the old days, this was a cassette player. So they really just took the same design and they took out the
compact
cassette
flash card in it.
And put a compact flash card in it.
But it burned battery. Wow, did it kill the batteries.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's even got my phone number still on it. That's interesting.
Nice.
Hope you all caught
Look
that.
Away.
Wow. That is the memories. 2 mics, by the way. 2. Count them.
Nice. Yeah. Look at that. Imagine.
And boy, the levels, you had to get those right. There was no 32-bit float on that sucker.
No.
Well, I just ordered. This is a hat trick. I ordered all 3 of your products
yes,
as we were doing the show. So
Bing,
congratulations.
bing, bing, bing.
I'm only out $380. Don't worry, it's not coming from the Club Twit Fund. That slush fund does not go to me. That goes to Burke.
I won the Alex Award for the most expensive thing.
You win the award. Congratulations.
The last person who goes is the most expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously.
We'll just look at the prices. There we go.
Folks, we do this show and spend Leo's money every Tuesday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's kind of a fun game we play here, the home version. If you want to watch us live, you can on YouTube, youtube.com/twit/live. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show are available on the website, twit.tv/mbw. You can also, hi, Lily. That's my lunch. Yes. Thank you. She's sniffing around my lunch. Hey.
Show title.
Hey, stop sniffing around my lunch. I got my lunch pail right here. You know, we got to economize. I brought the sandwich. You can also watch a YouTube channel, video only. Well, there's audio in the video, so it's also video and audio for MacBreak Weekly. Dedicated to it. Best thing to do is subscribe. Now, there you do get the choice. You can get the audio-only version or the one with video and audio in your favorite podcast player. And that way you can listen automatically the minute we are done. Deepest thanks to our Club Twit members for making this show possible and every show you see on the air here. Security Now is coming up. If you tuned in and you're saying, wait a minute, Security Now time. Yes, you're right. It's coming up in just a little bit. But it is time to say goodbye to our esteemed panel and remind you that you got to get back to work because break time is over. Bye.